I do think that it can have an effect on players, as you touched on earlier, and I actually talked to Robert Thomas about it today. I said, what about these changes? And I got it queued up right here in my laptop. He said, definitely there's been a lot of changing up. I think it's hard. Plays happen quick, and you need to know where guys are. So, yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get used to guys. So I think the players, as Thomas says, they are kind of going through a little bit of that. But, you know, I guess you could look at it both ways. Some people say, hey, keep them the same and let these guys get some sort of comfort level. But, you know, when you find yourself in a situation that the Blues are in, granted, it's early, like we keep saying, Drew Bannister wants to keep moving things to find out what works.
That was Jeremy Rutherford yesterday on the Fast Lane. I actually had an audible gasp as he said that quote. That's what I did in my car. I was on my way to pick up Luca, and I heard that from JR, and I was like, wait. I listen to Robert Thomas every week on the morning show, every single week. I've never heard him say something that revealing about like an actual hockey decision.
Did you gasp when Kara was next to you and she got mad because she thought something bad happened?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Cool.
You know?
I was going to say, because I get hit when I do that.
I don't know how I drove prior to getting married. I don't know if you have the same experience.
Oh, yeah, you're terrible at it.
I would never make it through a traffic light. I would never know what to do, where to turn, how quickly to get over. Anyways.
Yeah. I thought Garmin was helpful, but then I married my wife.
The play-by-play just happens like 3 miles ahead of where Siri's going to tell you where to go.
Yeah, and you look down at your phone for like 2 seconds when it's a red light and it turns green and you go, green light!
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, and I break things. That's what happens.
So that was Jeremy Rutherford yesterday on the Fast Lane. Alex, he sent us the audio of what Robert Thomas said. So now you can hear it in Robert Thomas's own words. Here's what Robert Thomas had to say about the constant line juggling and what that's like as a player and how difficult it can be to develop that chemistry.
Yeah, definitely a lot of changing up with lineup. I think it's hard. You know, plays happen quick. You need to know where guys are. And so, yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get used to guys. I think we're getting shots, but we need better quality. We need, you know, high-grade chances and dangerous chances. And, yeah, volume's good sometimes, but we need to find a way to get better shots.
What he said there at the beginning is the important part. It's really hard to develop chemistry. It takes time. And so far this year, the Blues haven't allowed for that. Drew Bannister hasn't allowed for that. There's been a lot of juggling of these lines. And at some point, I do kind of like the idea of a coach saying, hey, we're going to find something, and once it clicks, we'll stick with that. I also, it's that fine line, though, of if you keep doing that too much, it's never going to stick. And eventually, you're just going to drive yourself crazy to the point where the guys say to you, we just need to go with something. Whatever it is, even if it's the wrong combinations, and we know they're the wrong combinations, just allow us to get a little bit of chemistry here. And they haven't allowed for that. So far this year, the combination that Thomas has spent the most time on ice with is Holloway and Neighbors. That's the combination that at 5-on-5 he has spent the most time with.
That was a good line, too.
They have played 17 minutes together at 5-on-5. He has played 16 minutes with Thomas, Shin, and Neighbors. He's played 14 minutes with Booch and Kyrou. That's not just like swapping out a guy here or there. That's a wholesale line change at times that the Blues are happening. And it's like a third of the time he spent with each of them. That's your top line, dude. You have to get the most possible out of Robert Thomas. I think it is now time for the Blues to just set it and forget it. Even if I hate the line combinations, at some point you got to get there. I think we are at that place. Alex, is this to you an alarm bell about Drew Bannister and the way that he's managed the first 5 games of the season so far?
When Robert Thomas, your best all-around player, is saying that, yes. I just looked at this on Natural Stat Trick. Do you know how many line combinations the Blues have used at 5-on-5 this season in 4 games?
You were able to count them all that fast?
I was able to count them that fast, but it's great math. Okay, calm down. Whoa, what's speaking? Whoa.
I'm going to go, let's see, there's 4 lines. 16.
7.
19.
Jeez.
He's used 19 different lines.
I don't think 25 was that far off, actually.
There was 6 in the first 3, so that would be 18. Okay, no, 20. There was... Remember when you asked if you did that fast?
Fast?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. 13, 19, 23.
I was really close.
It was 23. I did terrible math.
How were you that far
I didn't count the first game. I had 19 with the first 3, and then I was like, oh, shoot, there was one more game. And then he only used 5 combinations in that first game against the Kraken guys.
Yeah.
But the other ones, he's used 6 and 7 in those games.
God, man.
And Robert Thomas, and I believe JR had this stat in his piece earlier today, Robert Thomas has been on the ice for 8 even strength goals against. Guys, that is your number 1 defense or centerman who is a shutdown centerman just as much as he is a point producer. And I know when you hear Thomas say that, you're reading into the offensive side of it. I also think he's saying it on the defensive side of it. You got to know where your other guy is at. If you're the centerman playing in your own zone, you need to know that you've got backup that's going to control the puck on one side of the ice.
Trust.
And if I'm in the center spot trying to make sure a play is killed, but my forward's not going for it because he thinks he's playing the center spot, now you're getting jammed up and you're not going to be able to play the right way in your own zone. So I'm not sounding the alarm bells on the Blues. I am sounding the alarm bells on their line combinations, because when Robert Thomas is saying, yeah, it's a lot right now, and sometimes you have to know where the other guy is, you can't keep doing this. You could do this on your 3rd and 4th line. Berube used to do it all the time, where you'd put a new guy on the 4th line and you'd move a guy up, double shift him on the 3rd line. When you're doing it to your top 2 lines that are supposed to be generating all of the offense for you, that's a problem. And if you're not going to build line chemistry, you know what's going to happen? You're going to find yourself trailing a lot in hockey games, and then you're going to be jumbling up the lines once again, and you're never going to find that line chemistry. You need to stop. I think you need to put it down in pen for at least 2 periods and say, let's see if you can generate some offense.
Yeah, I think it is an alarm bell. I agree. Probably not on the Blues, but a little bit on the coaching from Drew Bannister. And I mean, this dates back not just in the regular season. Let's go back to the preseason, where you've got the preseason going on. They play like 4 games, and then they don't generate anything offensively. So what's he do? Boom. We're going to break it all up. We're going to shuffle everything in the top 9 in our lineup. And then they play one preseason game together, and then you get to the regular season, and they come out a little flat in that first period against Seattle, and then you start to see all the line juggling start to occur. Again, I don't think line juggling is such a bad thing. I said this yesterday. If you're struggling to generate offense, it makes sense to try and juggle things up and see what you get. The problem is I look at 2 games so far this year, and I go, okay, San Jose, they played well. Still saw a bunch of line juggling. The last game, we all agree in this room, they played pretty well against the Minnesota Wild for the first 2 periods. Still saw a bunch of line juggling going on. It's just weird things that are going on, and it is kind of some red alarm bells going off, especially now you got a player, I wouldn't say outspoken or critical of his coach, but kind of doing with a little hint, wink of, hey, this is kind of weird and it's not working.
At a minimum, he was asked a question of, hey, is it hard for you guys to develop chemistry when you have these new line combinations every game? And he certainly did not shut that down. The easy answer there is, listen, we'll make it work no matter who's on the ice. I've played with these guys before, and whether that is going out there with Booch and Thomas or Booch and Kyrou in the middle of the game, or if I'm with Shin, I've played with them before. We have a pretty good idea of what each other are doing. He didn't say that. He said, yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
And I think he's right. I've never gone out there and laced up the skates, so I don't know for sure that he's right. But, theoretically speaking, it makes sense to me. It reminds me, again, a lot of when you're growing up playing basketball. There are certain guys that just have chemistry together on the court. They know where each other are going to be. They know how to react in real time to certain pressures. There's a reason why Aaron Rodgers wanted Devontae Adams, because those guys are on the same page. He and Garrett Wilson have not been on the same page at times this season. And that natural chemistry that just exists between 2 guys, whether it's on the field, on the ice, on the basketball court, it's real. It's tangible. There's no real way to quantify that, but it is something that you can feel when you're out there. And so I don't love the way they've gone about this, and it is really frustrating to watch at times. It is I don't want to say an alarm bell, but it is something that I'm monitoring. It's something that I want to keep my eye on, because as we continue to progress this year, if this doesn't change, I do think they're at risk of potentially losing some of that trust just among players and coach.
So I'm only 2 lines deep because it just spawned on me now. The Colorado Avalanche have lost 4 consecutive games. They're 0-4 right now.
I knew they were bad.
Yeah, so I told everybody that they were bad. You know why? No goaltending. So
they didn't have a goaltender when they won the cup either, though.
And that guy didn't have an eye.
It's better than Alex Georgiev right now. Looking at their line combinations after they started 0-1, 0-2, and 0-3, they've changed their lines once. Now, I don't know in game. I didn't watch all of those games, but at least the starting lines from their first game to their third game, they made one change.
And I'm guessing in Colorado today, they're saying we need to juggle the lines. Because when you're 0-4 and you haven't changed them much, that's the first thing you go to. And I think at that point in time, it is totally necessary and justified to do so. What is different about where the Blues find themselves is it's been constant. No matter if there is success or there's not, there's always something that has to change. And I think there's something to that specifically with the fourth line. I have grown more and more frustrated as we have learned more about the reasoning behind the change on the fourth line. This is Drew Bannister yesterday on why they decided to replace Nathan Walker with Kapanen. Quote, that line as a whole has been really good for us, especially on the road. I thought they took a step back as a group, though, not just one player. For that line, they're at their best when they are able to wear teams down. They didn't get to their game as much as they had in previous games. When we do that, we have good players sitting out that want to get in the lineup. If guys aren't playing to what they feel the expectations are, somebody will step in and will want to take their job. So Kapanen in, Walker out. That's the way they're going about it tonight for the fourth line.
That was a good player he's referring to. Gotcha. Okay.
Alex, that line has been your identity line for the first 3 games of the season. They didn't play super well in the fourth game. And, like, so far this year, I've seen nothing from Kapanen to suggest that he's going to play well. In his Blues career, I've seen very little from Kapanen to suggest that he's going to play out
he
there.
was dominant.
That, to me, falls really flat, especially when you've got guys on the team that have come out and said they've been dragging us into the fight for 50% of the games that have been played so far this year. And Walker is pulled out of the lineup now because of one potentially bad game, and I'm not even sure he had, like, a bad game. He just didn't have the same impact on the game as he had previously. All of this stuff, when you add it up, there's just something that kind of stinks. And it makes me wonder, what's going on here, man? Like, it just feels kind of off.
Yeah.
I kind of like watching this team play. They're not great, but they're fun. They're interesting. They're younger. They've got a lot of guys that I think are going to be a part of the future. But the way that they're being constructed, and this is just purely on the coaching side of things, it does leave me questioning, like, why is that happening? Why is that the way we're going about things? And there have been questions asked, and when I hear the explanations, I'm like, well, that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. It's like the 60% winning percentage thing with Booch at center. Well, we could attack that in 100 different ways. That doesn't justify putting him at center and leaving him there for the rest of the season. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Why can't Braden Shin be a second-line center? Well, because he's not ready for that. Well, you have him as a third-line center. You have him as a top-line winger. He can't play second-line center? I don't understand. There's just a lot of stuff going on right now, Alex, that leaves me saying, I don't totally get that.
Yeah. Not fun when you have to say, and I'm just looking through this because that Corsi rating for that fourth line against the Minnesota Wild was at like 21%. The game that Kapanen played against Vegas, where he was with Braden Shen and Matthew Joseph, was at 27%. Here's my problem with taking Walker out and putting Kapanen in. And this isn't anything to do with Kapanen. It's more of what you're taking out with Nathan Walker. You lose a lot of players in your locker room when you do something like that. Not that they don't like Kapanen, but when you've got a guy who is an engine, who everyone in that locker room loves because of how he plays, everyone's like, really? That's the guy you're going to take out right now who works his ass off out there? And the problem with putting Kapanen in is, I said this yesterday, guys like to know what their role is on a team. Guys like to know what you want out of them. And now you're putting Kapanen in a fourth-line role with Radek Faksa and Alexei Toropchenko, whose sole focus in these first 2 games that everyone was applauding them about was the ability to go out there, stir some ish up, and pull his team back into the fight. I've seen a good amount of Kapanen. I can't say I've seen a lot of Kapanen.
I haven't seen a lot of it.
I haven't seen that from Kapanen. And maybe you're trying to spark some offense from your fourth line, but for me, I don't think that player matches the role that you're looking for on your fourth line, which tells me you're going to be juggling that fourth line again, which at some point in this game tonight, is Kapanen going to be playing on your third line? Is he going to be playing on your second line?
Probably,
Are you moving things around?
That's the way things go.
Exactly. Your fourth line needs to stay.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Blues versus the Islanders tonight at 7 o'clock. That's when the puck drop will happen. Alex will have pregame coverage tonight starting at 6 right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. We'll be joined by Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and Bally Sports Midwest, coming up in just about 15 minutes. But next, there's one player in this postseason that seems to elevate his game every single time he plays in October. Who are the other guys that live for October? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Takes a drive, left field. Nimmo's going back. He's on the track. He's at the wall. And he's gone. Kike Hernandez again. The postseason transforms Kike Hernandez. He's made it 4-0 Dodgers.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That's what it sounded like last night as the Dodgers, once again, just take it to the New York Mets. This is looking like a series that one of the teams is just overmatched. The Mets are not... They're not going to be able to match up against the Dodgers, in my opinion. Now, this could look really, really dumb a week from now as the Mets are taking on the Yankees in the World Series. That's possible, I suppose. Dodgers have a better offense. I think they've got a deeper pitching staff right now. Dodgers up 2-1 in the series. They went 8-0 last night. Alex, I don't want to spend a lot of time breaking down that individual game because, frankly, there wasn't a whole lot there other than Shohei Ohtani. What a ridiculous home run. That was just insane. 415 feet down the line, upper deck, just a moonshot. I do want to talk a little bit about Kike Hernandez, though, because I find him to be fascinating. This is a guy that during the regular season is a below league average hitter. 705 OPS for his major league career during the regular season. And then in the postseason, he becomes a superstar. I can't explain it. It's the David Freese phenomenon here in St. Louis all over again. David Freese, really solid regular season player. Gets to October, becomes Barry Bonds. I don't know how. I don't know why. Something about the moment, he lived up to it. 919 OPS for David Freese in his postseason career. Kike Hernandez is at a 905 OPS in his postseason career. That's better than Derek Jeter. Just for context, Derek Jeter in his postseason had an 833 OPS. Yes, the most overrated player in the history of baseball was slightly above league average in the postseason. In fact, he was essentially Jock Peterson. Cool. Congratulations, Derek. Anyways, so if Derek Jeter was on the Dodgers and Jock Peterson was on the Yankees, we would call Jock Peterson Mr. October. But I digress. Who else is like that in your guys' opinion? Are there other players that, I'm not talking about just the greatest postseason performers ever. That's, Carlos Beltran, Manny Ramirez, David Ortiz. But those guys were also spectacular during the regular season. Who are the guys for you that you remember where it's like, wait, that guy's playing like Barry Bonds and it's October and he was like a below league average hitter during the regular season? Because that's Kike Hernandez. Yeah.
The first one we have to bring up is the reincarnation of Babe Ruth and Randy Arozarena.
Second best OPS in the playoffs in the last 25 years.
Because when the brights were the lightest, that man would step up and just crush baseballs.
335 average with an OPS of 1,100 for Randy Arozarena in 128 postseason plate appearances. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
That stings, doesn't it? And then essentially, I think you'd have to go the entire Atlanta Braves outfield when they won the World Series when you bring up Jorge Soler, Eddie Rosario, bring in those two guys that just combined to create Ronald Acuna Jr. offensively, to where both of those players, it was like, I don't know if I should expect these guys to really move the needle. And then you got to the postseason, it was like, hold on, where did these two guys come from right now?
Yeah, that outfield is the one that originally came to mind. I'm looking to see what this player's... No, he was not very good. I was looking to see what Howie Kendrick did. He doesn't play anymore, but I remember him on that run with Washington.
That have one run.
Yeah.
The thing that's unique about Kike, he's done this every time they get to October, and it's just something that is unique to him, and I can't explain or describe why it's happening. Jock Peterson is this for me. Like, he would have been the other guy that I bring up in this regard is, hey, you want to win in October? Go get the left-handed bat that hits for a crazy amount of power that doesn't scare when the games are in their biggest moments. That's Jock Peterson. Daniel Murphy had that run. David Freese had the run here in October for the Cardinals.
The hard part is finding a guy who's not good in the regular season, because like most of the guys that are coming to mind, I'm thinking like, oh, well, this guy was postseason.
Albert was amazing. Bryce Harper, unbelievable playoff
Like I looked up
Yasiel, but they're also
MVPs. I looked up Yasiel Puig because I'm like, I thought that guy just tortured people in the postseason, but he was good in the regular season. So it was like, it's hard to find those two guys.
I think it's easier to find the pitchers than it is to find the hitters. Because the hitters, you look up and down the list, like these are the guys since 2000 with the best OPS in the postseason. Barry Bonds, Randy Arozarena, Manny Ramirez, Carlos Beltran, Bryce Harper, Albert Pujols, Nelson Cruz, Giancarlo Stanton, who also probably fits into this category to a degree, where it's like gets into the postseason, and he's been unbelievably clutch for the Yankees. Rafael Devers, Lance Berkman, David Ortiz, Yordan Alvarez. I'm just reading you a list of the best hitters of the last 25 years, really. They also happen to be the best in the postseason. On the pitching side of things, it gets a little bit more interesting. Madison Bumgarner, while very good during the regular season,
wasn't great.
Was otherworldly once you got to October. And I think relievers can really become this as well. Look at Luke Weaver. That guy was the closer for the Yankees for like a month, and now he's borderline unhittable. Nobody seems to be able to get a hit off of him. I think stars are more born on the pitching side of things than they are on the hitting side of things in October.
How about Matt Cain with the San Francisco Giants?
There you go.
There's another one where he was like always a high 3s ERA, and in the postseason, I think he had like a career sub-2 ERA.
I mean, think about the guys that have done it for the Cardinals in the postseason in the last 20 years. The guys that you remember that had huge playoff moments that were just merely average starters during the regular season. Last year, Jordan Montgomery had an unbelievable postseason.
Evaldi.
Brandon Pfaadt, great postseason, and was like pretty good during the regular season. You can become a star in October if you are on the pitching side of things. And I think it's a lot harder to do that as a hitter. Jeremy Offelt, here's one for you. In his playoff career,
Friend of the show.
33 innings, 0.8 ERA, tied with Mariano Rivera for the best of the last 25 years in the postseason.
All right.
Now,
Ian Anderson, 1.2 ERA in 35 postseason innings.
dang.
Yeah. Matt Cain, 2.1 ERA in 51 innings as a postseason pitcher.
Jeez.
Giovanni Gallardo,
Okay.
2.3 ERA in 35 innings.
I thought of
Barely
another.
remember him.
I thought of another position player, Daniel Murphy.
Yeah.
Oh, we said him.
Did you say him? I missed
Thanks
that.
for listening to the
No,
show,
I missed
man.
that. Sorry, I was trying to come up with names. This was like a game of search and find for me.
Yeah, this is the classic meme on Twitter, right? Guys can sit around for an hour and just talk about
Just random names
players from the last 20 years.
If you want to list random goaltenders that played in the NHL, I'm
Jeff
winning that.
Suppan, another guy.
Suppan's another one. I mean, think of a reliever
Jason
for
Markey.
the Cardinals that kind of created his name in October was Jason Mott. You know, Mott ends up winning the closing job at the back end of 2011.
Didn't Edward Mejica do that too?
Yeah, he didn't have postseason success, so he just kind of became a name in St. Louis. But Mott was that. You know, Mott was never really a great closer. I mean, he was always kind of league average in saves. But why do you always remember the name?
Interesting too.
Yeah, part of it because he couldn't see. But he couldn't. It was the whole thing. But you always remember Jason Mott's name, one, because he closed out the game for the World Series winning team, but he also just went on a great run in that postseason to where you could trust him. Tony La Russa doesn't name him the closer until win the final out of Game 7. So, yeah, I think it is a lot easier on the pitching side to have those guys that are kind of the 2s or 3s have got decent stuff, but they can just completely change the game when you get to October. Because why did we want Evaldi this past trade deadline? Not because he's a great pitcher, because of October.
Yep.
And it's a lot harder to find those guys on the offensive end of the...
This is also getting back to just really quickly localizing things. That's why you got to get the stars on the position player side of things. Because those are the dudes that, as you just heard from that list that we read out, you kind of know who's going to show out once you get here. Like Shohei Ohtani, big moment last night. You knew that was going to happen. He's got crazy numbers right now with runners in scoring position. He has 0 hits when runners aren't in scoring position this postseason, which is crazy to me. But with runners on, he's been otherworldly. On the pitching side of things, dude, who knows who's going to show up? Luke Weaver can randomly be like, oh, that guy is Mariano Rivera now, and he's going to close out the World Series for the New York Yankees. And nobody saw it coming. Position player side, you need the stars. You need the stars to come through, and those are the guys that ended up typically coming through in the biggest moments, which is why a guy like Kike Hernandez is so unique. And when you see somebody like that, we got to appreciate it for what it is. All right, he's Alex Ferrario, that's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, Joey Vitale is going to break things down for us. Maybe he's got a better explanation for us. He can help us understand, Alex, why the Blues are doing what they're doing with their line combinations. We'll talk to Joe about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they host the New York Islanders. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for puck drop at 7. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend, the one, the only, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN, and of course, Bally Sports Midwest. He's Joey Vitale joining us here on the show. Joe, how you doing today, my man?
Joey! Ah, you're so awesome!
Doing well, boys. Doing well. Always appreciate the chance and the cheers. Just heading back to the Enterprise Center now. Doing well. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. Thrilled to have you on today. So, Joe, let's look a little big picture with the St. Louis Blues, if you don't mind. We talked in our open today about the line combinations, juggling those things up. I've never put on skates to go out there and play hockey. I've never shot a puck at the net. I don't understand how this works with the chemistry, but you've been out there. You've played at this level. How difficult is it to gain that chemistry when the lines are juggled as often as they have been for the Blues this year?
You know, it depends. It depends on the personalities. It depends on how quickly players can adjust. It depends on the agreeableness of their personality. How much are they willing to give of themselves? How much are they willing to take? You know, this is more of a psychological. This is more of a Sigmund Freud question territory than certainly a broadcaster like myself or people like you and Alice, of course, BK, because there's so much that goes into it, and I think that this is where Drew Bannister is looking to try to experiment and just find that right rhythm, especially on the offensive side of things, where you have three individuals that you're trying to figure out what that balance looks like. It's do you put all the stars on one line? Certainly you could. Certainly he has, like last game where you put Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou together late to try to spark something. But at the same time, you've also seen it where coaches have done this in other teams. Look at the Colorado Avalanche, where they had Rantanen, Landeskog, and McKinnon on the same line for a while. And, once that kind of burns up, the lines are so
tunnel.
Move McKinnon and Rantanen away from each other, and all of a sudden, when times get tough, you put them back together. Long story short is, you saw it with Thomas, for example, and Kyrou. You add a veteran player up there with some good defensive prowess. They're going to get tough matchups. What does that look like? Brandon Saad, too, he's always a 20-plus goal scorer, so he's got the offensive ability as well. But, Drew Bannister is trying to split up the talent. You got to break up Buchnevich and Neighbors to one line, and then maybe Kyrou and Thomas to another, because especially on this homestand, you're going to need one of those lines to crack through. And if you put too much of that offensive on one, if that can get off, then you.
Joe, on the 5-on-5 side of things, Robert Thomas talked yesterday just about, trying to get into the offensive zone and need to be more direct, harder on pucks, and maybe not so much of that transition hockey that we've seen in the past. When you look at their 5-on-5 play, they're generating scoring chances, but does it still feel too much like perimeter hockey?
Yeah, it does. I mean, that last game against the Minnesota Wild, it was a frustrating one. It was frustrating for the players. It was frustrating for the fans because, the Blues, they decided that they thought that was going to be a good game where they're going to go back to that transition style of hockey. And listen, when this transition style of hockey is working, it's working. And this is a fun, electric team. But there are times you're going to run into an opponent. And like the Minnesota Wild did, they suffocated the Blues. Their neutral zone, their D hung back. They had numbers back. They had high guys in the forward. There was nothing of an odd man rush that we saw in that game. And you really got to credit the Minnesota Wild for knowing that this Blues team, they thrive from transition. So you're a transition team. You've been a transition team for a couple of years. it's something they continue to work on is this other element of being an offensive threatening team, meaning you're going to chip it in, you're going to chase it down, you're going to hunt it down, you're going to recover it, and you're going to keep it below the offensive dots, and you're going to start generating cycle chances and punch shot chances and outnumber at the front of the net. Well, they didn't do it enough in Minnesota, and it burned them. You look at all the championship teams over the last few years. Let's look at the Florida Panthers. Can they beat you off transition? Absolutely. They can dangle, they can dazzle, they can wow you. But you know what else they have? They have that offensive game, that tip and chase game. So, like the Oilers decided, hey, we're going to shut down this transition game. Well, they're more. Look at the a great player off the rush. Jack Eichel, great players off the rush. Mark Stone, great players off the rush. But they also had this other element that if that gets shut down in the game, like it was against Minnesota Wild, all right, guys, first intermission didn't go great. They're shut down in transition. Now we're going to chip, and we're just going to go down. We're going to hunt it down. We're going to go old school. And right now, I think the Blues are still trying to find their way in that and figure out what that looks like. But the sooner they figure it out, the more success they're going to have this year, because teams are just getting better and better, and scouts are getting better. Scouting reports are getting sharper. So, being able to shut a team down through one angle, you have to dig deep into that other angle as far as how you're going to beat opponents.
Joey Vitale is our guest here on 101 ESPN, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and Bally Sports Midwest. You'll hear him on the call tonight starting at 7. Pre-game coverage with Alex starts at 6. That's right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Joe, final question that I've got for you today. The Blues are going with a new defensive partner for Parayko tonight, with Leddy potentially out in this one. It's Ryan Suter. He's getting the opportunity to be on that top pair defensively. What do you think of the move to bump him up to that top pair? How do you think he'll do?
I think he's going to do great, BK. The only other person I think deserved that top position job up to this point was probably Broberg. And I think that Drew Bannister has liked this Falk and Broberg pair so much, he doesn't want to break it up. So, certainly in one situation you lose a top defender, everyone just moves up one notch, right? Broberg goes to the top. All of a sudden, Suter goes to the second, and then you bring in a P.O. Joseph to the third. But when a pair is looking as good and as sharp as Falk and Broberg have looked, you leave that second pair alone, and then you just basically leapfrog Suter from the bottom pair all the way to the top. Listen, this is a situation that Ryan Suter has been in plenty in his very, very long career. He knows how to play top pair minutes. He knows about every opponent he's going to be facing here tonight. The guy's been in the league a long, long time. So I think that you look at the situation where they're looking to add some chemistry for Colton Parayko. Nick Leddy's been dealing with some injuries, has not looked himself. You put up a dependable Jay Bouwmeester style of defenseman in Ryan Suter right next to Parayko. And we all know how Parayko and Bouwmeester went on that run and gun show for about 5-6 years there. So I like it. I love it. I think he's fully capable of it, even though he's pushing it in age. This is a guy that can still eat up 24, 25 minutes a night. It's amazing how he does it. He's such a smart player, anticipates so well. I think bringing a good veteran back there, not to say Nick Leddy wasn't, because he certainly was, but bringing a different-looking veteran player back there to calm things down for Colton Parayko, who has not been as sharp 5-on-5 as we all know. I think it was 6 goals against 5-on-5 for this top pair over the first 4 games, which to be a top pair guy is just quite frankly not good enough. So they're looking to bring a little spark to Colton Parayko's game, and I think that Ryan Suter's a guy for the job.
Hey, Joe, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll be looking forward to hearing you on the call tonight. Blues versus the Islanders, 7 o'clock puck drop, pregame starting at 6 right here on the home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Hear you tonight. Talk to you again next week. Appreciate the time as always, my friend.
Sounds good, boys. We can't wait to talk to you next week.
Absolutely. That's Joey Vitale joining us as he does each and every Thursday here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate his time as always. Alex, he did bring up the top pair defensively and how Colton Parayko hasn't really been himself so far this year. You are as big of a Colton Parayko fan as anybody that I will ever meet. What have you seen from Parayko so far this year?
I've seen just miscommunication on the ice. I mean, if we're gonna rag on Nick Leddy as much as we are, I mean, Colton Parayko is on the ice at times. You've seen him pinch offensively and get caught with odd man rushes the other way. You've seen pucks that kind of slide behind him and go backdoor. So as much as we're going to rag on Nick Leddy, you do have to look at Colton Parayko and say that's not what he typically is. Part of it for me, though, feels like Leddy and Parayko have been off in terms of knowing where the other guy is going to be, where last season it felt like you knew exactly where the guy was going to be. Does some of that have to play into the forwards that are on the ice and the miscommunication that's taking place? Does some of that have to do with the defenseman pinching in so much offensively that you're getting into odd man rushes? And when it's an odd man rush, it's ultimate scramble mode when you get back.
That's something that I would hone in on.
Yeah.
I think Parayko has, at times, he's almost run himself out of plays where he's like pinching so far in. Like there have been times where he's playing behind the net.
Yeah. Which I don't know if that's a coaching thing because he's a big body and he's strong on his stick. I mean, the goal, it rolled off of his stick against Minnesota, but I mean, he was parked in front of the net for that tip in.
I don't know that that's necessarily his game. And listen, like Jamie could certainly break this down better on the afternoon show than I can here right now. But just as a total amateur hockey guy, when I watch Colton Parayko, I think stay-at-home defenseman. Like, hey, stay back. You've got the big shot. It's a booming shot. If you have the opportunity to take it from deep, go for it. But otherwise, like, and this is why I think that Broberg actually might be the ideal partner for him at this juncture in his career. Or previously, we've talked about somebody like Perunovic before, things went awry for him. But maybe Perunovic would have been a good opportunity to play with him, is because those guys can get a little bit more up in the rush and up with the offense. I think Broberg is potentially that guy right now. My guess is the reason why they're going with Suter is because it's a placeholder. It's one game. You expect Nick Leddy back soon, and then you put Broberg back, or put Suter back on that third pair, put Leddy back on the top pair. You don't want to mess anything up with Broberg and Falk, but I would have liked to have seen Broberg get that opportunity.
I would too. I'd like to see it at some point. I'm actually kind of curious what this Suter and Parayko is going to look like, because what it does is now you put a stay-at-home defenseman with Parayko to where he can do what he's done. I mean, you go back and look at his first 4 seasons in the NHL, and look, I understand 22 and 25 versus 31. You're not a spring chicken anymore, but all of his points came at even strength. And if you're chipping in, Jay Bomeister was the guy that was the defender that said, go play your game and I'll be the one back there. Here's the thing with Suter, and I know a lot of people look at it and say he's 40-plus years old. How good can he be? Man, last season, he played almost 600 minutes with Miro Heiskanen on his offside as a second or top pair defenseman, however you want to look at it. But I scroll down a little bit more. A pair that he played a lot with, which might really resemble what the Blues are going to have tonight, is he played with Esa Lindell. And Lindell is somebody who's a big body, kind of a shutdown defenseman, and Suter played with him, and the expected goals against per 60 minutes was less than 2. Can you be more of a shutdown? Because what you have right now, and what Joe said, is you've got a pair that's working offensively and defensively.
Absolutely.
Can you get this one to be more of a shutdown against the other team's top line so that Parayko or that Falk and Broberg can go out there and do their damage? Man, even if you get a little bit of a hot streak with those two guys and you could string it together for 10 to 15 games before it falls off the cliff, take advantage of that, and maybe you can get a little bit more from Parayko.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, it's the 10-year anniversary of a not-so-great moment for the Cardinals. We'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. You can check us out on YouTube. Ask questions there as well. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL. Questions and answers next here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Guys, what's your take on Tommy Edman's postseason performance, leading the Dodgers in average? Does it surprise you, make you mad, or do you just not really care?
No, I knew that was going to happen. Tommy Edman was traded away, and it was like, hey, looking forward to seeing you succeed in the postseason this year for the LA Dodgers.
Yeah,
static electricity
I
right
don't know
now.
what's going on. What you doing over there,
BK over there with his.
What are you breaking again?
It's his zucchini juice.
Always again?
It's his zucchini juice he's
always
drinking.
causing these problems?
This is a spindrift. It's a sparkling water.
And you give me
fancy.
Put your pinky up when you drink that one, sir.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Tommy Edman's playing well in the postseason. I mean, he's a classic guy that we always talk about. What do you always need, both A, in the regular season and B, in the postseason? You just need good league average hitters that can play solid defense. And Tommy Edman can do that, so it doesn't shock me now. I'm not necessarily looking at batting average, but hey, he's been a good player. And I love
batting average is .455, so at that point I will look at it.
I don't even care. That's an incredible batting average.
I also love the fact, did you see what he's done this postseason? He did it here in St. Louis in the regular season because he never got to play in October here. But he's done a lot of this right-hander struggles against righties, or I have this, there's this pitch that I want to do. He's batted right-handed against right-handed pitching a couple of times so far this postseason.
Yelling for that for the longest time with him, and they never would do it?
Yeah.
They did a little bit, but not a lot. We did it for Carlson.
Much more with him than they did with Carlson. But
never did it with Carlson.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this at all. Tommy Edman's a good baseball player. We said this when they traded him. The reason that we, on this show at least, celebrated that move was not because they got rid of Tommy Edman. I would have been fine with Tommy Edman being around for the long haul, but he wasn't going to be. They got a pitcher that is likely to be here next year at $7 million for a team that was likely to cut their spending next year, and a good starting pitcher at that. Eric Fetty has his limitations, but a good one for a guy that probably wasn't going to be here anymore. It's a good trade, man. And Tommy Edman, it was also a really smart deal by the Dodgers because they got a good player that can play second, short, center field. It allows them to be super flexible with their lineups. I like it. It was a good move by both sides, and I'm not surprised at all that Tommy Edman's having success.
It'll hurt once he's celebrating a World Series championship, right?
Wouldn't it hurt if he's like World Series MVP? He's like in the David Eckstein role.
I'm numb to that now.
This is a little different to me. That one wouldn't hurt me.
I kind of agree. I was just kind of playing that side.
For sure, but I think there have been
I'll say it hurts because, I mean, it's not fun when you see former Cardinals go on and have success
I would
and be a
actually
pivotal
celebrate
part.
this one. This one wouldn't hurt me at all. Like, there would be no amount of me that would be hurt.
Well, I mean, look, because
Tommy Edman was a really good Cardinal, man.
I agree
he came
with
out
that.
of nowhere, had a really good Cardinals career, plugged any hole that you had at the time that it was necessary, and ended up going on to have a good, successful career with the Dodgers. I got no issues with that. They should re-sign him, too. He should be back there.
Those are two separate conversations, though. Like, I'll celebrate for the individual, because I agree. Tommy Edman was an awesome dude. It's frustrating when you see guys go on to have success elsewhere, not just at a level where it's like, oh, that's cool. At a level where it's like, are you bleeping kidding me? Again?
That's right. All right, 314-399-9646
500 batting average in the postseason. Like, seriously?
Just for this series. This series is 455. For the postseason, I think it's like 300 or something like that. From the 636, are you guys really drinking zucchini juice? Alex?
Well, not all of us.
I don't drink. Mine's coffee.
Yeah.
BK drinks zucchini juice.
I drink coffee
I don't drink zucchini
Anything
juice.
green and that BK can juice, he puts it in a jar and then drinks it.
It's from Fresh Time, and it's their green time.
And you know,
juice.
and you know what's worse about
kale
it?
and
BK's a slurper too. He's like,
you're the worst. Please
like,
never make that sound
God.
again.
So you really have to slurp it in front of everybody, man?
From the 314, guys, do you think that the Steelers will be back in the postseason this year?
No, because who's their starting quarterback this week?
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, no, it's over.
And even if they make the playoffs, just bet against them. They're such a fraud. They can't move the football up and down the field. They win games because of their defense. It's like Iowa football, but at the NFL level. So, no, I
felt
don't
like
think
they
so.
were at least making strides of being a better team, watching just the progress of Justin Fields. I don't understand the whole point of let's get Russell Wilson some reps with the first team now. Why? Like, you brought in two quarterbacks, and you were like, we're going to see if somebody can rejuvenate their career. Wilson wasn't ready. Fields was, and Fields performed. And you're just going to say, no, let's go to Russell Wilson now. I don't like it.
I'm with you. I think Russell Wilson is a bad quarterback, and I think Justin Fields is a slightly below league average quarterback. And when you have those two options, I would go with the guy that's slightly below league average. And one of them is younger and could be around long term. And he gives you something that the other one doesn't, which is the legs. Like, Justin Fields, while limited in his throwing ability, has has the ability to win with his legs. We haven't seen it a ton this year, but I do think it's something that eventually would have helped. All right, last thing here from the 314. Guys, how will you remember the 2024 season? Not from a player perspective, but from a team perspective. What will you end up remembering from this season 20 years from now? Is there going to be anything that you guys remember team-wide 20 years from now? Because, like, obviously we'll remember Shohei. Historic performance from him on the offensive end.
Honestly, I think I might remember Mike Schultz's collapse with the Padres.
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, you had that series in the bag, and all you had to do was not put the starting pitcher out there in short rest. I might remember. And then you allowed the Dodgers to breathe, and then they were able to just pounce on you.
Funny thing is like the Padres would have been the most memorable team. I think what I'll remember is whatever Wikipedia tells me who won the World Series.
Yeah.
Because there's just not, even though the Dodgers we viewed them as like a Death Star coming into the season.
They're not.
It was clear like a month in, it was like, yeah, this team's got some major holes. They just spent $1 billion.
Got another one. The Royals choking.
Oh,
Come on, man.
The
Royals might be one of the biggest stories that you remember from this season, but not for that, for getting back from 100 losses to making the postseason the next year. But that would have required them to probably get to the ALCS.
Like, if I'm being honest, it still feels kind of forgettable because you're right. They didn't make the ALCS, and they're just one of those small market teams like Cleveland. If you ask me probably next year, who did the Yankees beat in the ALCS? I am not going to guess Cleveland. I'm probably not going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it wrong. So, to me, there's not a memorable team that's
I think it's
still
as
around.
much, to Alex's point, about the teams that failed to live up to expectations as it is teams that exceeded
The
expectations.
Brewers, another one. Like, you're not going to remember the Brewers collapse, but
the Phillies. Like,
the Phillies.
I won't remember anything about the Brewers, to be honest with you. But like the Phillies this year, not living up to expectations. The Braves having the year from hell when it came to their injuries. The Dodgers not having any pitchers by the time we get to the postseason and maybe still winning it all. The Astros having a historically bad first month and a half of the season, and this potentially being the end of this era of Astros baseball. Like, I'll remember it more for that stuff. The Orioles. This was supposed to be the year, and it just, for whatever reason, never came together. I'll probably remember it more for that stuff than I will for anything that happened in a positive, unfortunately.
And the funny thing is like the one, or not the one, but one of the positives that I would think would be memorable is, because we've talked about the last 2 years, is, hey, look, the 16 Mets potentially get to the World Series if they find a way to come back in this Dodger series. Yet, because it's almost become the norm, you don't really talk about the Mets.
Yep.
You just view them as, oh, they still have the highest payroll in baseball, so they're not really an underdog. Yet they actually are. They're a 6 seed that needed a McDonald's character to come to a ball game to really spark their comeback. And OMG, they've got a song that's really cool.
Keep Grimace's name out of your mouth. That's the best character from McDonald's.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll dive into some NFL quick hitters with some more trade buzz around the league. But next, we are officially 10 years into the Cardinals' postseason abyss. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Travis Ishikawa hits one into right. The Giants win the pennant.
At the time, we didn't know that was going to be when it all ended.
I will remember you.
That was 10 years ago last night.
Oh.
10 years ago, you woke up and thought to yourself, well, next year will be better, and then it never was.
Oh, God. You put it into that perspective.
And then it never was.
He's not wrong.
That was the end of the era.
So you're saying the Giants broke the Cardinals the same way the Blues broke the San Jose Sharks?
More or less.
Oh, my gosh.
Not to the same degree, because the Cardinals didn't just implode. The next year, they won 100 games. 2015, you were an excellent baseball team. Unfortunately, you won one game in the postseason. And then you missed for the next 3 years. The Cubs, and they went on to do this whole thing where they won the World Series. It was celebrated, all that stuff.
Oh, so you lost the World Series winner, though.
Thankfully, the Cubs ended up imploding in their own right. So, you know.
Yeah, but the Cardinals can't use the "we broke you" because they broke you too.
Cardinals lost, did not make it to the postseason in any of the next 3 seasons. Then, you guys know, 2019, you had that really great series against the Braves, and Yachty had that moment. You go to the NLCS, and there's empty seats, and you get swept. You haven't won a series since. You've won one game since, and it was during the COVID season where you won one game against the Padres.
Chill, okay? You don't need to keep stabbing the knife.
Let me put it in a different context for you.
No, good.
From 2004 to 2014, that decade span, the Cardinals played in 100 postseason games. 100 postseason games. Second most in Major League Baseball was the Yankees over that stretch with 62. You nearly doubled them up in terms of postseason games played.
You were good.
You won 54 playoff games.
Oh, my gosh.
The most in all of Major League Baseball. Second most was Boston with 39. Second most in the National League was San Francisco with 34. You were the dominant team in all of Major League Baseball for a decade. And then it ended. And since 2015, the Cardinals have played in 19 postseason games and have won 5. That is the 18th most in Major League Baseball over this stretch. 18th. You have become an also-ran. And this is why Cardinals fans hate where we're at right now. And it's totally understandable. I don't blame you for it at all. Alex, when you think back 10 years ago to where you were as a fan compared to where you are today, what comes to mind for you?
Disappointment, sadness. You just made me relive all of that. I found a way to stuff it all down, and then it's just all come back to light with us. I mean, you think of, honestly, I said it tongue-in-cheek, but you do think of disappointment for the last 10 years because they've had teams that you look at and you're like, oh, wow. Got something here. Now, some of those teams were frauds. Some of those teams were like BK trying to sell us that this offense can be incredible, and it might have been, but it really wasn't.
That was 21.
Yeah.
21 was probably a fraud.
Or was
22,
like,
I don't feel that way.
It wasn't like 20. Which one was the one where they had all of the power, but you did not believe in any of their offense? Was that 16 or 17?
I don't know. I wasn't doing a show with you at that point, so I don't know.
See,
I was with Kevin Wheeler.
I felt a little Tony.
I mean,
easy Kadarius.
I wasn't selling you anything.
No, I'm not saying you selling, but what were we talking about with the team as fans of like this offense looks like it could be good, and then we found out that they were frauds.
Maybe 16. I mean, they didn't make the postseason any of those
16 or 17. Regardless, it's been disappointment because you went from a World Series with Pujols leaving, and then like all of a sudden it's like, hey, you find a Carlos Beltran, and hey, you get some of these pieces that are actually they're a part of the solution in terms of you still competing, and then you hit this weird spot as a Cardinals where they're actually aggressive in terms of trading for Jason Hayward, going into free agency, trading for Marcell Ozuna, trading for Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. But then there was no postseason success with it. And a lot of the reason was something dried up when it got to the postseason. You didn't have the postseason actual performers, or you weren't willing to add on to those rosters. So for 10 years, it's felt like, hey, they actually probably could do something if they're willing to be more aggressive, and they never were.
Somebody from the text line just brought up something that T-Bone, you referenced before the segment today from the 314. You guys both have young kids, so you can relate to this. I just had my firstborn. My son is going to grow up with a completely different perception perception of what the Cardinals are than what I had growing up, and that sucks. I'm 30 years old.
That's a great point. I went to Cardinals games on a regular basis with my dad because the teams were always
meaningful. Not just Cardinals games, meaningful Cardinals games.
But what I mean is my dad found it important to take a 10, 11, 12-year-old me to a Cardinals game because he didn't want to miss the success that team was capable of. He didn't want me to miss an Albert Pujols. He didn't want me to miss a roster that actually could win a World Series. And you look back, I remember I used to keep the ticket stubs. We went to the 2006, I think it was either the DS or the CS, whichever one they played the Mets. And I had the ticket stub because my dad wanted me to remember that. Now, I don't make it a point to make it a point to get to one Cardinals games with my girls a season.
Yep.
Because it's like, hey, you get to go to a Cardinals game, you get to enjoy it. But it's not because of the team, it's because of the experience. That person is spot on.
Yeah, I mean, they're not wrong because, I mean, you think about it now, like, who's the guy you're going to go watch that is like a legitimate superstar?
A Hall of Famer, right? Like in their prime Hall of Famer.
Not Mason Wynn's WAR.
Because Arenado is a Hall of Famer, but he's not in his prime right now. The way that Albert was, the way that Yachty was, the way that so many of the guys
and
that
there's
you remember
no
going up.
guy that was ahead of the rotation for years. Like I remember growing up with Chris Carpenter along with Adam Wainwright that were there. Like you don't have that anymore. And when you don't have winning baseball, you know what? Whether they have superstars or not, you don't care.
That's ultimately what it is.
Let's just be honest about it.
Yeah. And one leads to the other. It's the chicken or the egg thing, right? Like you need those guys to become the team that we're talking about here. Like you don't have that historic level of success without having Albert Pujols or having in the like post-Albert era Matt Holliday and piecing things together beyond that by going out and being aggressive, adding a Carlos Beltran, having somebody like David Freese already here ready to go. Like you had other in-house candidates that could help to boost the offense. That's just not where they're at today. And they haven't been there for 8 years, 10 years almost. Somebody brought up on the text line, guys, this is why I don't like John Mozeliak, and yet you keep telling me every day that John Mozeliak is better than I think. What I'm saying is that 07 to 2014 run, I think Mo doesn't get enough credit for it. That's the part that I push back against. I think he should get more credit than he does for constructing those teams and for pivoting when Albert Pujols ends up going elsewhere. That's not an easy thing to do, man. And those teams after Albert left, I mean, look back at it. 2012, you go to the NLCS. 2013, you go to the World Series. 2014, you go to the NLCS. This didn't fall off a cliff right after Albert left. In fact, you had more success without him than he did by going elsewhere. So I think he does not get enough credit for that. What I agree with everybody on is after that 4 to 5 year stretch, something changed.
He misses the pivot. And this is what I was going to bring up again is there's no coincidence that 2015 is the year where it's kind of there's the 100-win team, but then from immediate after that is when it starts to go around. Because you know what happens in 2015? We enter the modern day of baseball. 2015 is that Cubs team that has Bryant, which is what? Lifting the baseball. Launch angle becomes a huge thing. So you get this new modern approach in Major League Baseball hitting, which is, okay, we got to lift the ball, which then ultimately ends up transitioning to, okay, maybe it's not so much lift, it is more about exit velocity when it comes to swinging. And about 2015 is when you start to, it's probably not 2015, more a couple years down the road, but that's about the same time when you get the modern day pitching of, hey, it's more about chasing swing and miss, guys with better stuff. We're not going to go look for innings. We're more looking to maximize 160 innings out of a starter rather than getting the 200.
You got the super teams.
Exactly.
The Cubs tanked, and then here we come.
Yep.
The Astros tanked, and then here we come. Teams are spending $200, $300 million on their payroll now. The Dodgers, it's not the, hey, we're going to like take on your bad deals to be able to add prospects to our system anymore. Now it's, okay, those bad deals are gone. Our farm system is operating the way that the Rays used to. And we're also going to spend $300 million on our payroll now on an annual basis. So they got passed by the teams that had tanked because of what you're talking about, T-Bone. They were really smart. They invested in all of these different things. And they got passed by the teams that are now willing to spend way more than what the Cardinals are willing to. So it was both sides of things. They were no longer winning the arms race. They were also no longer winning the we're smarter than everybody else race. And there had been some brain drain within the organization. TLR gone at that point for a number of seasons. They had some guys that came through the minor league system, coaching-wise, that were no longer with them or had been promoted to the major league level. Guys in the front office that had gone on to Houston or had gone on to Baltimore, gone on elsewhere. There's a lot of stuff that combines, gets to your point, which is they fell behind.
They missed the next pivot.
Now they're a decade removed, and it took them a decade to realize, oh no, we're behind, because all things considered, they did a pretty good job of piecemealing things together to still get regularly to 85 to 90 wins, but that's not enough here. That's not enough in this market to convince fans that you're really doing what you need to in order to stay at the top. Because what they remember is that 2004 to 2014 run where you went to 100 postseason games, 154 of them, and you were an annual contender for World Series. They no longer felt that way starting in 2016 or so and haven't really ever since. 2014, unfortunately, 10 years ago, yesterday, was the day where all of that died.
The day where they said, let's get Michael Wacha into this game.
Well,
And everyone knew that that was the smart move.
we should have known that.
Nobody second-guessed that one.
Nobody's
first-guessed
I
that
specifically remember where I was. I was sitting in the KMOX sports office, and I saw it, and I'm like, this is the right move right here.
I can remember my mom letting me stay up late to watch that game because I think I was in middle school, and I can remember specifically thinking, even in middle school, going, why are we going to Wacha here? He hasn't pitched in a long time, and here's Matheny just running him out of the bullpen.
Better call Matheny to Wacha or Schilt to Reyes.
Schilt to Reyes.
man.
There's no questioning this one.
Dude.
He was an all-star that
We
year.
all knew what was coming. All of us.
I know, but you had to do it. I mean, he was an all-star that year.
No, you didn't.
Wacha was bad, man.
It was the correct. You guys are right. Going to Reyes in that spot was not a good move.
Again, I know where I was at the
I don't know
time.
who else was in the pin at that point because he burned all the real
His
good arms.
ERA in that game was infinity.
Well, yeah, because he hit a home run the first guy.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK.
That was a boot jet center stat if I've ever heard it.
Next year on 101 ESPN. All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. I want to start today with Harrison. I'm kidding. We're not going to talk about Harrison Butker today. You see he's in the news again?
Yeah, dude. Why is it every single time there's one segment of a show where BK doesn't want to get political? But
look it up, T-Bone. You can have a conversation on the politics podcast that we do after the show.
Yeah.
That'll
it's a
be
subscriber-only podcast.
He'll do the politics podcast after he does the dad podcast.
And after our Cardinals podcast.
All right, so Mike Williams
and after he writes
is
an article.
back in the trade rumors. Apparently, he reported back to the facility for the New York Jets today, Alex.
And Rodgers told him to leave?
Probably.
No, you can't talk to the team anymore, Mike.
Mike Williams, the former Chargers receiver, has had a really tough go of it this year. He has not been on the same page with Aaron Rodgers, and frankly, doesn't look like the same player. He looks like he's a shell of himself, but he's likely to be traded. He's going to be the odd man out in New York after they traded for Devontae Adams, and there was a new report earlier today, Alex, from Diana Rossini of The Athletic. The Chargers, the Steelers, and the Saints are among the teams, not the only three teams, but they're among the teams that have reached out to the Jets about acquiring Mike Williams. Alex, I don't want to make more of this than needs to be. This is a number 3 receiver for a good team, probably. Who do you think Mike Williams makes the most sense for?
I mean, I would say the Steelers because they need another option for their quarterback, but what's best for Mike Williams? Probably the Chargers. Somebody you're familiar with. You go back with a quarterback, a system that you're at least somewhat familiar with, and a new head coach. Mike Williams' biggest thing was his health with the Chargers. If he could have stayed healthy, could have been a bigger deal than what he is right now. So if you're him, that would be the spot that I'd want to go back to.
I think Steelers makes all the sense in the world, especially now that you're moving back to Russell Wilson, who, when Russ cooks, he just likes to throw the deep ball. Mike Williams can be that deep ball wide receiver that they need. I think Pittsburgh's probably the best fit for him.
I'd like to see him in Pittsburgh because I think they're a pretty decent team, and I think he can be the kind of guy that ends up adding another element to their offense. I know they already traded for a receiver, but I'd like to see him go to the Bills.
Oh, I thought you were saying that about Pittsburgh. I was like, what? What did I miss?
No. The Bills just added Amari Cooper. I don't know that Keon Coleman is ready for this kind of a role yet on a contender. I think Mike Williams really adds an element to them that would be pretty interesting. He's a guy that can go deep. You give him like 3 chances at a deep ball per game from Josh Allen. I would find that to be really interesting.
And you shift Shakir into more of a slot receiver.
And you know what your roles are now. Amari Cooper on one side, he's kind of the Z flanker receiver. You've got Khalil Shakir exclusively playing in the slot, and Mike Williams is your big X receiver that's just going up over the top and go up.
Did you say the Ravens? Because that would be my other one.
That's another good
I was just
one.
about to ask, would he make sense for Baltimore? Get him in as a deep threat?
Do
now
the same
Flowers
thing
I think Rashad Bateman is doing a lot of that stuff right now, and he's actually having a pretty decent season for them, so I don't know that they didn't necessarily need it.
But then you get 2, and Flowers can become that slot guy for you to where you can utilize him a little bit more on top of your 2 tight ends.
The Chargers do make sense, though, to your point, Alex.
If you're Mike, that's probably the best case scenario for you.
You've got some familiarity there. I like that one a lot. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Tonight, Anthony Stalter and Rafe are going to be at Hot Shots in Fenton from 6:30 to 8:30 because the Broncos and the Saints are taking on one another in Thursday night football. This is a game that's going to be played in New Orleans. Not Khalil Shakir. Rashid Shaheed is out in this game, as is Chris Olave. They will also be going with Spencer Rattler, last I saw. So they've got their backup quarterback, 2 backup receivers in, and they are down to their 3rd-string center. I believe they're down one of their tackles as well. This is not a good spot for the Saints offense. They are only a 3-point underdog, though, at home. How do you guys see this one going between the Broncos and the Saints tonight?
I think this is going to be the Broncos, and it's going to be a very boring game because the Broncos defense has been awesome. I've doubted them a couple of times this season, and it's bit me. And watching that Broncos with that team, which Spencer Rattler, quarterback again, didn't look so good in the later portion of that game with all of those injuries. Yeah, I would say the Broncos got that one.
Yeah, I'm going Broncos as well. This feels like a 20-10, 17-10 kind of game. I don't know.
10-7.
The total is 37.
Yeah, under. Take that.
That is
under.
A ridiculously low total. I wonder how many totals there have been this year that low.
Oh, I'm sure not many, if at all. I think when you look at the Broncos, they've got a pretty solid defense. They're going to be able to kind of bottle up Spencer Rattler, bottle up Kamara. Like, they're now you're one-dimensional if you're the Saints, and you clearly don't trust Spencer Rattler all that much, even though he played fairly well in the last game. Denver's going to be able to game plan for that. Bo Nix will be able to do just enough for them to come out on top. So I think like 20-10, 17-10, somewhere in that range, but give me the Broncos.
I would take the Broncos in this one as well. I will be doing so for the Fast Lane Pick'em Challenge.
Shh, don't tell everybody.
I think everybody's probably going to be going with the Broncos in this one. I'm a little surprised. There have been more point totals this low than I would have expected this season.
Look, again, Rattler looked good in the first half of that game last week. Second half, it got ugly, but now you're going up against a legit defense.
This is the 4th time this year that the Broncos have had a point total of 37.5 or lower. It's 36 against the Chargers, 35.5 against the Raiders, and 36.5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. On all of those, they went 2-1 with the over. Over in those games twice, under once.
We're due for an under.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be an under game for tonight for sure. If you guys had to watch one game the rest of the week, what would it be? We'll talk about this more in depth tomorrow, but I actually find this to be a pretty compelling slate on Sunday, much better than what last week's was. Last week was brutal. It was not fun to watch on Sunday. Texans versus the Packers is a good one. Lions Vikings is pretty compelling. Chiefs 49ers as well. If you could only watch one, what are you putting on?
You didn't even mention Ravens Bucks too. That's another really good one. I know that's on Monday night, but mine would be Lions Vikings. I'm loving the Lions all around team more and more as the season progresses, and the Vikings, they have the best defense in the NFL. So that's going to be the matchup for me. I do really like that Packers Texans because, man, if you want to go like underdog Super Bowl matchup, that would be it.
Totally.
I do like that one to go a little bit different. I'm going to go to the rematch of the Super Bowl, Chiefs at 49ers. I mean, it's two teams, and I know the Chiefs are 5-0. It's two teams that just aren't giving off great vibes right now.
49ers favored in that game.
Yeah, and not by
it's
much,
only
one and a half. But San Fran just looked a little off. I mean, I think we talked about this last week or a couple weeks ago of you like look up and you're like, hey, they're playing pretty well, and then like you check back and you're like, oh, they lost. Oh, well, how'd that happen?
It's the old Shohei Ohtani stats with the Angels, right? Shohei Ohtani,
he's like 3 homers, throws 6 shutout innings, and the Angels lose 8-7. That's kind of how they feel. So both teams feel off. I'm curious to see how they match up against one another. And I like Kansas City 5-0. They don't feel like a 5-0 team.
Kyle Shanahan has been a coach in the NFL for 20 years. In some capacity, assistant or head coach. He has never defeated an Andy Reid team head-to-head. 0-7 straight up against Andy Reid in his NFL career. That is definitely a game that, as you guys can imagine, I will be watching on Sunday as well. Packers-Texans, though, to me is most compelling. 2.5-point line in favor of the Packers. I think these teams are super similar. They've both got some deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball. They both have some injuries in the wide receiver core that they're dealing with right now. So they're not going to be at full strength. I love both of these teams. They're two of my favorite teams to just watch. Like from NFL Red Zones on, if I could pick the game that I get to watch, I would almost always have a Texans and a Packers component to it because I just really enjoy watching their quarterbacks. They push the ball down the field. They have receivers that get open. Their offenses are really fun to watch just from a scheme perspective as well. They typically give up a decent number of points, which makes the games more compelling as well. If you're playing like daily fantasy this weekend, Texans versus Packers is one of those games that I would be targeting because I do think it can be pretty high scoring in that one. A lot of fun to watch. All right, he's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up next, Drew Bannister has talked a lot since being hired as the Blues head coach about competition. Are we taking that a step too far with what he's doing right now with one of his lines? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they take on the New York Islanders. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for puck drop at 7. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK coming up in about 30 minutes or so, is this something that the Cardinals could consider doing in the offseason, or are they going to go the cheap route? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But, Alex, when I think about the Blues right now, I think Drew Bannister is trying to promote competition. We saw that all throughout their training camp this year, where they had a ton of competition that was taking place within the lineup. So much so that it hindered their ability to really get any kind of chemistry with their lines. But I liked it. I liked the fact that they were really trying to, hey, make Bolduc earn his way onto this team. Make Dvorsky earn his way onto this team. And if they don't, they're going to go back down to the AHL until they're truly 100% ready. But now that we're into the regular season, it does feel like maybe we could take that a step too far. Here's Drew Bannister yesterday on why Nathan Walker was pulled from the lineup.
You know, that line as a whole has been really good, especially on the road for us. And I thought they took a step back as a group, not just one player. They had the one shift in the second where they got hemmed in when we were a lot of ozone time. And, you know, for that line, they're at their best when they're able to wear teams down and playing the other team's offensive zone. And I just thought they didn't get to their game as much as, you know, they had in previous games. And, you know, when we do that, again, we have good players sitting out right now that want to get in the lineup, and guys aren't playing to what we feel the expectations are as players, and somebody will step in and want to take their job.
Alex, the overall numbers for that fourth line are terrible. Like, if we're going to look at them analytically, it's been horrific for the fourth line. But guess what? That's what happens when you have a fourth line out there. Their job is not to go out there and create a bunch of offense. If that's what you're expecting from Nathan Walker, Radek Faksa, and Alexei Toropchenko, dude, we're going about this the complete wrong way. None of us expected that from them. They create energy. They make things hard on the other team. And a lot of the time, that means they're spending most of their time in the defensive zone. And they're trying to, like, break the puck up from the guys that are in the offensive zone. And hopefully you get it back in the O-zone, you get off the ice, and now you're able to get your next line out there. Yeah, there was a shift where that didn't happen for them, and they struggled out there occasionally. They're a fourth line. That's going to happen for them. Mm-hmm. You can't have one shift dictate whether or not Nathan Walker, of all people, is going to end up not being a part of the lineup the next game. I do think there comes a point in time where we take this competition a little too far, and we're putting Kasperi Kapanen out there, for example, on opening night in the lineup just because you thought he was better in one preseason game than what you saw from Zach Bolduc, or now Nathan Walker had a bad shift, and so we're putting, again, Kasperi Kapanen in his spot when Kapanen really doesn't fit the mold of what this fourth line has been at all. He doesn't fit them stylistically. It is a bit confusing to me, a lot of what's been taking place, but especially this part of it. I heard that quote yesterday, and I was like, man, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Let me guys ask you a question. Simple question.
Sure.
What do you think the role of a fourth line is? You said it's not to score goals. What's a role of the fourth line?
To create energy.
Score goals.
For me, that is the goal of the fourth line.
And how would you create energy?
By changing what the feel is of the game. It's more of a feel thing to me. Like, I can look at my nerdy advanced analytical numbers, and every fourth line in the league is going to be like, yeah, that line's not very good. Yep. But then when you watch the games, because we watch the games on this show.
You don't watch the games.
You can feel the impacts that they're having. Yeah. And if I can feel the impacts that they're having, if I can see that they are noticeably making the game harder for the opposition, that to me is what the fourth line's job is.
And I was leading you down a path for that reason, because typically you change the feel of a game by using physicality. Now, we always say, like, it doesn't mean you have to go out there and hit everything, but you're a physical presence to try and create separation from player and puck. Guys, Nathan Walker in that last game against the Minnesota Wild had tied a career high with 6 hits in the game. And that line created 8 hits with Walker, Toropchenko, and Radek Faksa on the ice. I bring that up because their role as a line is go out there and please breathe some life into our team right now because we don't have it. Go out there and just create a stir. And they did that in terms of the physicality. The problem was you didn't pounce on it. Now, if we're going to go down the path of what Drew Bannister was trying to say there with essentially accountability, if that line's not going to do what we need them to do, then we're going to sit somebody so somebody else can come in and create competition. That's accountability. Guys, let me go down the list of players because those 3 guys have been on the ice for 3 even strength goals against combined. Let me go down the list of players who have been on the Blues ice, forward-wise, who have been on the ice for more goals against individually. Braden Shen, Robert Thomas, Jake Neighbors, Kasperi Kapanen. So if we're going, and again, I understand you're not sitting any of these guys, but if we're going to go down the path of accountability because that fourth line wasn't doing what we needed them to do against the Minnesota Wild, and we're going to sit the guy who had 6 hits, who was playing his role to a T, but we're just going to act like that's going to solve the problem for a guy who has been on the ice for 3 even strength goals against. You always won competition, and look, coach speak versus what's actually taking place in the locker room. We don't know those conversations. That's just not the message I think I would try and deliver with a guy to a fan base who sees the work ethic on the ice and try and say, yeah, we're going to sit him because they weren't doing what we needed them to do.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Guys, his point is not to try and make it work with these other guys. It's to send a message and to hold players accountable that he wants to and should be playing accountable. I don't know that it holds anybody else. Like, I don't think Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou or Pavel Buchnevich or Brandon Saad or Braden Shin, I don't think any of the players really in your top 9 feel like they are going to be held accountable by Nathan Walker, who has been a consistent up and down from the AHL to the NHL type of a player. I don't think they are going to feel held accountable because Nathan Walker is pulled out of the lineup for the way that the fourth line performed in the last game. It's like, I don't know that that really has much of an impact on these guys. Last year when he sat Pavel Buchnevich on the bench for a period, that has accountability that everybody on the team looks at and is like, oh, okay, this dude is not playing around right now.
And it worked.
And I'm not saying he needs to do that because I have not seen stuff like that. I've not watched the Blues this year and felt like, okay, there's a lack of effort. That's not how I feel. I think that at times there is a lack of just flat out ability on the team, like where they're just not as good as some of the teams that they're going up against, or things aren't clicking chemistry-wise for them right now. But it does not feel like they are lacking the effort this year. I think sometimes stylistically they get away from like the harder style of play, but it's not a lack of effort in my opinion. So I don't get the sense that this was necessary coming off of the last game. And if it is just as simple as, hey, we like Kasperi Kapanen, just say that. Like that to me is where, like, one of the things that I really appreciate about Doug Armstrong is how honest he is, right? Yeah. His candor with the media, his candor with fans of these are the expectations. This is where we're at. This is how we view players. Even with Jake Neighbors came into the season and said, hey, listen, I love Jake Neighbors. I'm his biggest fan. I don't know what to make of last year. Yeah. Is he going to be a consistent 30-goal scorer, 25-goal scorer, or was that a one-off? We'll find out this year. That's something that I'm excited to see. That's candor from a general manager. With a head coach, this is, I suppose, candor, where he said, hey, our fourth line didn't play very well in that last game. I'm just not sure I buy that.
Yeah, it's just a tough thing to try and sell because if you're relying on your fourth line to generate the offense for your team and that's why you're taking somebody out, there's a bigger problem at hand. And again, I think a lot of Blues fans see what's taking place with all of the line juggling and all of the combinations. Again, 23 different line combinations in 4 games. Fans see that. And then to go to a fourth line to where 2 out of the 4 games that you have played, they have been massive dictators on the outcome of that game. And one bad game where it did not look good for them. And I can't admit that because they were not good in terms of controlling the pace and they were not good in their own end. But one game, you're going to look at that and point and say, yep, we need a change here. And again, it's not so much of pulling the guy out as it's putting the player in to replace him because Walker and Kapanen are 2 very different role players. And if you're Drew Bannister, it seems like it's more, hey, we need a little bit more offense from that line. And as great as they've been physicality-wise, we want to see if we can spark some more offense and depth to our lines. That's why Kapanen's taking that spot.
Andrew texted in and said, Army talking before the year, during the deadline, and after the year can say things differently than what Bannister can, who is talking every day. That is 100% true. That's accurate. There is a difference in the way that you have to describe things as a manager, general manager, versus as a head coach. I get that. That being said, like this move, like what they have described it as doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Just like their move of having Pavel Buchnevich as their second-line center because they win 60% of the games in which he starts at center, that doesn't hold up to scrutiny either, especially when they are moving him to wing for half of the minutes that he's playing at 5-on-5. So for this specific one, if this is about, hey, we think Kasperi Kapanen gives us more as a fourth liner, or hey, Kasperi Kapanen right now has one last opportunity to prove his worth because we're about to make a move with the IR with Texier coming back in the next game. So we want to find out once and for all, hey, is there something here with Kapanen where maybe we send Perunovic through waivers instead and decide to go about it that way? Or do we keep him, like, what do we decide to do here? If that is the explanation, just say we wanted to give Cappy a little bit of an opportunity here to prove himself right now. And then we can all read between the lines and say, okay, this is his last gasp. It's entirely possible that's what this is. That's not the way it was described. And so I do think honesty helps. And in a moment like this, I don't know that this was to me, the explanation lacked.
Well, and here's the thing. You'll find out. You'll find out what that line looks like tonight, because if they look off and they're not even on the same page as each other, and that's a line that you're relying on, and now you have to juggle up other lines and you're not sure where to play Kapanen because it's not working on the fourth line, you've exposed yourself a little bit. But if they go out there and you've got some chemistry and maybe they're generating a little bit more offensive zone time, now you can look at that and say, yeah, that's what we were going for. So we can either be absolutely incorrect with what we're seeing, or we can look at this and be like, yeah, this is what we were concerned about.
Last thing that I wanted to get to on this, it's not just about the fourth line and Walker versus Kapanen. This is just like a symptom of a greater issue, which is all of the movement that's taken place within the line combination so far this year. So, like, we can have an individual conversation about Booch at center. We can have an individual conversation about Broberg and should he continue to be on the second pair defensively, and I want to have that with you. We can have an individual conversation about Walker getting pulled from the lineup, or about the way that they handled the Kapanen versus Bolduc thing early in the season when they had that opportunity, or about how they're not maximizing the offensive abilities of Robert Thomas right now by the wingers that you're seeing from him, or how they're deploying their lines in game. We can have any of those individual conversations. They're all symptoms of a greater thing that's happening right now, which is just a little confusion from the outside looking in as to how they're handling these line combinations. Last thing that I wanted to get to on the Blues, Alex. Do you think it would have been too much right now for Broberg to get bumped up to that top pair defensively? Because they're going with Suter instead. They're leaning on that experience. They want him to play with Parayko in this game that Leddy's going to be missing. Do you think it would have been too much too quickly for Broberg to be asked to play those kinds of minutes?
I don't, because I haven't seen it. And from what I've seen with Philip Broberg, who I believe is averaging about 18 and a half minutes right now when he's on the ice, 18:42, and that's like 7-minute bump compared to what he's been with the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, he's nearly playing what Colton Parayko typically plays, 2 or 3 more minutes. He doesn't look like he's overwhelmed right now, and he's getting second toughest matchups when he's out on the ice. He looks like he's controlled in his own zone. He's very comfortable and confident in the offensive zone. I don't think that would have been overwhelming for Philip Broberg. But I also wouldn't have pushed him up there yet. I was looking at this earlier today because I was curious. Since Jay Bouwmeester retired, how many guys Colton Parayko has played with? Tonight will be his 16th different pairing mate since Bouwmeester retired. God. So in 3, I think it's almost 4 years, Parayko has played with 16 different defenders on his left side. Last season, it was pretty sturdy with Nick Leddy, but you've gone from everywhere from Vince Dunn to Torrey Krug to Tyler Tucker and Callie Rosen. You've tried everything.
Man.
Don't forget Mikkola.
That's true, Mikkola. Now, maybe you're finding somebody a little bit more solidified in his own end, who's a stay-at-home defenseman, and Ryan Suter allows Parayko to blossom a little bit more. At some point, you're going to push Broberg up there because that is the ideal pairing right now. 4 games into the season where the guy's on a point streak and he's a positive in his own end. He's a +3 right now. Justin Falk's creating offense. If you're the coaching staff, you say, let's keep this together. But at some point, you have to find a solid pairing mate for Colton Parayko, and you say, that's it. That's our lines moving forward, and we're keeping it that way.
According to Luke Korak, Joel Hofer first off the ice this morning. He is expected to start, according to Luke Korak, against the Islanders tonight. So keep that in the back of your mind. No Nick Leddy in this one. P.O. Joseph will step in. Suter up to play with Parayko. Kapanen in on the fourth line. Nathan Walker out. Pre-game coverage for Blues versus the Islanders starts tonight at 6 o'clock right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN with Alex Ferrario. Coming up next, we're going to dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion, and the place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. For everybody, that might mean a little something different. It could mean weight loss. Maybe you want to go over there, get help with that unwanted weight that you've put on. They can help you lose it. Low testosterone, they can help you out with that. Erectile dysfunction issues, they've got help for that as well. It's a super easy process. Go to their website today, victorymenshealth.com. Click on the upper right-hand corner. It says book now. You book your first appointment over there. All it takes, name, number, email. Tell them a little bit about yourself, what you're dealing with, what they can potentially help you out with to unlock your inner champion today. Again, that website is victorymenshealth.com. For me, that looked like going in there and getting a micronutrient lab, which sounds complicated. It's actually pretty simple. You go in there, take a blood draw, and they'll tell you all about where your levels are at. For me, I had some pretty serious vitamin deficiencies. They've helped me out with that. I have better brain function now. I have better energy throughout the day. That's the way they unlocked my inner champion. They can do the same for you. It's Victory Men's Health and victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. Alex, what does your alarm situation look like in the morning? Are you a one alarm, boom, up, ready to go kind of guy?
An internal alarm now.
Sure.
Once you have enough kids, there's no sleeping beyond a certain time. So, like, we set an alarm. Mostly Katie sets an alarm because she has to make sure she's awake. And Katie she's a heavy sleeper. When she's out, she's out. She'll hit the alarm, and then it's like, get back to sleep. And she's got weddings super early on Saturdays, so I've got to, like, shove her to wake up. But yeah, my internal alarm clock is at like 5:30 or 6. And so at a certain time, you just can't sleep beyond it unless it's like, you pop a few melatonin and fall asleep.
It's interesting because, like, when I was in college, I used to be like one alarm that would go off and I would get up. No snooze, no nothing. I'd get up. Now I've got a billion of them set. I've got, like, I think 10 on my phone. I got 3 set on my Alexa. And I've got an actual alarm clock. And I've got my watch that I turn off a mute that will go off in the morning as well.
It's because your life is 2 pots of coffee in a daytime. You nap at 2 o'clock and wake up at about 6 o'clock and then sleep till 3 a.m.
Coffee intake lately?
I've been cutting back a little bit.
Yeah, where are you at right now?
Just a pot of coffee. No, just a pot of coffee in the morning.
Like a full pot?
Full pot of coffee in the morning, then that's it. Every now and then I might go to Starbucks to get other coffee.
How many cups is that for you? Like, how many times do you go back to refill?
Well, I've got a smaller coffee pot, so it's like 5 cups, so it equals like 2 full cups of coffee.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
So then, every now and then, depending on how tired I am, I might get a coffee.
That's what you're drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, mine's about the equivalent of 1.5 cups.
Yeah. Like today, I might go to Starbucks after the show and get something.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. He goes and gets more coffee on top of it.
Not every day,
He
though.
adds coffee on top of it. I was like that in college, though, to where it would be I'd have to set an alarm. And it would have to be set at the other side of my room, so I would force myself to wake up.
Oh, man, that would drive me insane. The reason I bring this up is because Dan Lanning was on with the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw this.
Dan with Dan.
Dan Lanning, the Oregon head football coach, was on with them and showed them what his alarm clock situation looks like. It is like a dozen alarms, starting from 4:30 and going up until 5 a.m. Every 4 minutes. He has a new alarm that goes off. It's for him to get up out of bed.
That's annoying.
Say, here's what mine
When
looks
I do
like.
the morning show.
Oh, my God.
Mine's every 10 minutes.
From what time was the first one?
7 a.m. to about 9 a.m.
You have an alarm
Tanner?
every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Why did I just wake up
Do you
at
need
the
to get
first
up by
one?
9?
Yeah, 9 a.m. is
Why
the
not
bare
just
minimum.
set 8:30 and 9?
No, because I want to make sure I get up. Typically, I don't get to that second part of it, but it's there in case of emergency.
But you know that actually ruins your sleep cycle in terms of how you feel when you wake up every 10 minutes for 2 hours.
What are you, a doctor?
No, it affects your sleep cycle.
He's right.
You're more exhausted throughout the day when you do that.
Let's see how much sleep T-Bone got last night. I wore the watch to bed. Let's take a look here.
You went to bed, I bet you 2 a.m.
No, 3 a.m.
2 a.m. I woke up at 7:06 this morning, so I got exactly 5 hours of sleep.
Now I see why you drink.
Yeah, now I know.
4
And
cups
you're
of
waking
coffee.
up every 10 minutes for 2 hours prior to getting up.
Apparently, I got out of bed fairly early this morning. I don't really remember that.
I have now become a one alarm guy. I previously was just like T-Bone.
You'll get to
I've seen
where
a
I'm
couple
at.
times where you're a 0 alarm guy.
Well, that's why I was like you. Because
to
in
where
the
I'm
past, I missed a radio show that started at 11 a.m. and got in at 11:30.
Because yoga took them a little bit longer.
Correct.
It's hot yoga.
So have been there before. Now, once you have a kid, honestly, my alarm clock is Luca. He's going to get up before I need to get up. So most of the time, he just starts either crying or being like, yelling in his crib that he's ready to go for the day. I'm a one alarm clock guy now.
We've taught Adelaide when she wakes up in the morning, because when she was younger, she would scream. And we were like, no, what you do. So we have her white noise machine.
Monitor.
Yeah, that changes colors. And so we have it set to where it's red until about 7:30, and then it's green, and then that she knows when she comes out. And so what she does is until it turns green, she sits at the door and just, Daddy, I'm ready to get up. Daddy, I'm ready to get up. And this will be at 5 in the morning. And so we'll roll over and we'll talk to her on the monitor and be like, baby, it's still nighttime. You go back to sleep. Daddy, I don't want to go back to sleep. I'm like, all right, fine. We're just going to wake up.
This is it. Welcome to parenthood.
There was something.
T-Bone, get excited.
Yeah, that sounds miserable.
There was an item, and I'm so upset with myself that I didn't buy it back in college. It was a floor mat that was an alarm clock.
Or you have to step on it.
You have to put your entire body weight on it for it to stop beeping.
I need that.
And they say once you get on your feet,
That's the
you
hardest
wake
part.
up. I wish I would have bought it at the time because man, it would come in handy so much today.
Yeah, that I could use that. Not that again, I have those set from 8 to 9 more if it's an emergency. Minimum I'm up is about 8 a.m. Then I'm up, moving, get my pot of coffee going, and I'm for the most part ready to go. But hey, you know where T-Bone catches his beauty sleep? It's the weekend, baby.
What time do you get up typically on a weekend?
Oh,
I
11
remember
a.m.
these days. I used to be just like that.
Mizzou,
But now
Mizzou played UMass at what time?
11.
I missed kickoff. I got up
Actually, I
at
think it was
11:30. I got up about 11:30. So I'll stay up till the same time. Sometimes I'm playing video games with buddies, so I'll stay up till 3, 4 in the morning on a Friday.
Sure, of course.
But I don't get up till about 11, 12 o'clock on weekends unless I have play-by-play.
That's just the hard part. Just for me personally, well, I'm sure there's a lot of people. It's not so much getting up early because I prefer that you get stuff done. It's balancing the going to sleep at the right time. Because I'd love to go to sleep at 9:30 because then it gives you your proper amount of sleep. But Blues games, I can't fall asleep until midnight because you don't get home till 11.
Yep.
Or in the summertime, you want to actually spend time with your wife. And so it's let's watch a movie. And then you're up till 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock. And it's crap. Now I just screwed this whole
I'm
thing
going to be
up.
up super late tonight. I got so much ish to do. It's not even funny.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, is this something that the Cardinals could consider doing in the offseason, or are they going to avoid all spending opportunities that are available to them. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so there was a really interesting pitching moment last night, Alex. The LA Dodgers went with Walker Buehler, who has not been good for them this season. People hear the name and they're like, oh, I remember Walker Buehler. Yeah, he's not that guy anymore. He's dealt with some injuries, and he's not pitched the same way that he once did. This is his walk year. He's a free agent after this season. He had 18 swings and misses yesterday. 18 swings and misses. That was the most through the first 4 innings of a postseason game by any pitcher since, here's a blast for the past for you, Kyle Loesch in 2003.
Way to go, Kyle.
Think about how great the pitching is in the modern game. How many guys just get this crazy amount of swing and miss? Like Blake Snell, think about how many starts he has had in a postseason game over the last 7 years. Walker Buehler, in the first 4 innings yesterday, had more swings and misses than any pitcher in the last 20 years in a postseason game. I bring that up because he's a free agent, and he can sign anywhere he wants to this offseason. Alex, to me, Walker Buehler is exactly the kind of pitcher that I would be targeting if I'm the Cardinals this offseason, if I can move off of some of the money from Miles Mikolas, or if I trade Eric Fetty, or if I look to move Sonny Gray for a real return and get off the money there. I don't think Walker Buehler is going to cost an arm and a leg. I think it'll be probably in that like Jack Flaherty range, $12 million, somewhere around there. 1-year deal. He's going to try to build back up some of his value. We see this every offseason. Luis Severino does it. All of the guys that have real injury concerns, they come in, 1-year deal. Let's see if this is the year that I can cash in after having a good season. To me, this team, if they can move off that money, that's a prerequisite, should be interested in making at least one of those deals this offseason to try to bet on upside, either to add another young pitcher to the mix that you got from the outside, or to capitalize on them at the deadline, cash in via trade the way that the Tigers did this past year with Jack Flaherty. Either way, or by the end of the season, maybe you qualifying offer him and he ends up walking for a big deal elsewhere. You get the draft pick that comes along with him walking in doing so. There is very little downside to this because even if it crashes and burns, whatever, it's a few $1,000,000, you end up saying, we missed. It happens. We needed a pitcher for that spot anyways, and you go with a young guy, maybe Quinn Matthews, or one of the other guys, Kloffenstein, whoever, is ready to go in that spot later on in the season. I'm skeptical they'll do this, but to me, that is something that I would be very interested in the Cardinals doing this offseason. Alex, do you think that is something they will consider?
Absolutely. Will they consider it? No. They're going to look at this and say, why would we do that? We've got the guys on our roster already, and we're slashing prices right now. We want our younger players to come in, and they're probably going to look at this as, well, this guy blocks a guy like a Quinn Matthews if he gets the chance with us, or a McGreevy or a Graceffo. They should absolutely do this. You're at the point now, because you're taking a different direction with your team, you need to start just at least taking some swings. And if those swings work, great. Even if you don't keep them for the long run, you can build your minor league system, which is what they're saying they want to do, by either trading this guy if you're not in the conversation of the playoffs next year, or, like you just said, you get the qualifying offer and you get the draft pick with it as well. Look at what Chris Sale did. And I know it's a different situation because Chris Sale had a longer stretch of consistency of being a top dog and had the injuries, but you knew he'd get back to it if he could stay healthy. You've only had a couple of years of Walker Buehler. But he's 30 years old, and Chris Sale is doing this at the age of 35 years old. So why not take a swing on a guy who, we don't know, maybe this is the best he's ever felt, and now you're going into an offseason where it's like, yeah, I'll reset my market, and I'll go out there and get a 5-year deal. But what if you've got a guy who can go the 35, 36-year-old route and be a top pitcher? Because the hardest part for me when you originally brought this up was this doesn't benefit you in the long run if you don't think you're competing in 4 to 5 years. But, man, if it's an asset that you can either flip to bring in more to help your minor league system, or maybe he's good for 4 or 5 years and you surprise a lot of people in 2 and you're ready to compete, now you've got a guy. Take a swing. That's my one hope for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think it is a move they should explore. I don't think they will, though. I mean, Mo's not shown the creativeness to go out and make this kind of move in the offseason. I mean, that's why we talked about the Chris Sale idea in the offseason. I think there was another one. I can't remember who it was that we talked about as a potential trade.
Snell was another one.
Mine was
Robbie Ray, I think it was the one that you're thinking of.
Yeah, because the Giants acquired him coming off of Tommy John surgery. So, yeah, these are the kind of moves you should consider. And, look, you can still make this kind of move and still cut payroll. I mean, teams like the Twins, the Padres did this. Padres cut payroll, and they also added to it by acquiring Luis Arraez early on in the season via trade. So this is a move they should be explore. Exactly. I totally forgot about that one. This is a move you should explore because you're right. Though maybe in theory you think about it as, if it's a 1-year contract, how does that help us in the long run? That can help you in the long run in so many different ways. Trade him at the deadline, qualifying offer him if he pitches well, maybe get a draft pick in return, or the fact that you could actually find a diamond in the rough and he gets back to being the guy that he was prior to Tommy John surgery, and now you can lock him up to a contract extension. There are so many different ways that could actually work if you bring him in. And again, if you bring him in and it fails, it's only a 1-year deal.
Yeah, whatever. It's
not that bad of a contract. So I think it's the right idea. I think it is something they should explore if he is going to need a 1-year deal to reset his market. I'm skeptical they're going to do it because they see more. And by the way, this is a move that can also help you try and win while also going through this refresh. They seem more willing to just say, no, we just got to cut payroll, forget about winning. We're more focused on our minor league system.
Another guy that could fit into this kind of a criteria would be Cleveland pitcher. Why am I blanking on his name right now?
Bieber?
Bieber. Shane Bieber is a free agent this offseason. He's coming off of
We talked about trading for him last offseason.
Yeah, he's probably not going to come with some kind of like massive cost. I could even see them doing something similar to Texas signed the starting pitcher this past offseason.
Malley,
Tyler Malley, who got a 2-year deal from them. They knew he was probably going to spend the majority of this season rehabbing. And then next year, they get him on the cheap for a reasonable price. Hopefully a good pitcher, has a bounce-back campaign coming off of injury. And you've got a guy kind of set in place there. Shane Bieber was not the same pitcher the last couple of seasons as he was early on in his career. But some guys come back from this kind of a surgery and actually end up reverting back to form. Maybe he was pitching through an injury that he didn't realize he had. He was just pitching through pain and he didn't think much of it. It's possible you could get him on the rebound. He's only 29 years old. I think we think of Shane Bieber and we're like, man, that guy's been around forever. He's 29 years old. You could have him, 2-year deal, get him through a little bit of his prime. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work and whatever, you're out a few million bucks.
If you're
those are the kinds of moves that I think they should be looking at.
If you're the Cardinals, you should be looking at both of those. I mean, like, you should look at getting as many guys who you're hoping to have a bounce-back season as possible. And I understand they're limited with the amount of money, but if you're getting rid of a lot of funds and you're bringing in 1-year deals for these guys, man, this is a dual threat. Because they either are great for you and they make you better than you expected because you get 2 guys who have been top dogs in the past, or you trade them at the deadline if they're great and you're out of it and reset. Imagine what the Mets could have got for Luis Severino at the trade deadline for a guy who had a 3.5 ERA, not a number 1, but maybe a number 2 for a team that's like, hey, we just need another guy who could be there for us.
I mean, he's been good for them. He helps them get to the NLCS.
If
you go out there and let's say you sign Shane Bieber, you sign Walker Buehler, and you just bring both guys on 1-year deals and say, look, reset your market. 2 things happen. They both pitch lights out because they know they're trying to reset the market, and your team is better than advertised for a group of younger position players that are bringing you offense, or you're not in the playoff hunt. They're awesome, and you flip them and bring in more players into your system that can help you make a trade for a bigger piece down the road.
So here's the problem, and this is why I don't think they're going to do what we're talking about.
The first time I get excited about the Cardinals, and this is what you're going to do?
Because I think this is what we're talking about is a really smart way to go about it. This is what the smart organizations do. They bet low on pitchers, and especially when they're in this asset accumulation mode, they either add them to the core. Great. It's kind of like what Doug Armstrong did, right? He takes these guys off of the waivers, Kapanen and Vrana. It didn't work, but if it did, okay, cool. Add them to the core. You go out there via the offer sheets, Broberg, Holloway, buying them on the low, hoping to get something right here. And if it works, great, add them to the core. And if not, guess what? It's a few million bucks. We're right at the cap anyways, whatever. And we'll move on in a couple of years from now. Hopefully the other guys that we had that were first-round picks end up working out for us. The reason why I don't think that the Cardinals will go about it this way is because they already have their rotation set. And we've seen them do this before, right? They've got Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, Andre Palante, and Michael McGreevy. That is 6 starters currently ready to go for them. My guess is they'll trade one of them. I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe it's Sonny Gray and his massive bloated contracts this year, and so you go in with Fetty, Michaelis, Matz, Palante, McGreevy. That's not a super inspiring rotation. I don't think they expect it to be, though. They're not going to sell you that it's better than what it is. They can't. I think that's probably what it looks like. Maybe they trade Fetty. Maybe they try to trade one of Michaelis or Matz. I think they're just going to go with that and go the easy route, go cheap.
But if you're going to trade those guys, if you think you can get out of the Sonny Gray contract, you know you can get out of the Eric Fetty contract because it's not that much, and you might be able to get something for it. Yeah. Even if you get out of those 2 and you say, you know what, we're stuck with Michaelis because nobody's willing to take on that contract, and you still have Palante and McGreevy in that system, you have 2 other open spots that you could look at and you say, why not go for upside with these guys? It's not going to cost us a lot. It's a 1-year deal, and we could turn that into something at the trade deadline. I mean, that's forward thinking for an organization that's trying to reset their pipeline.
I think all of this would depend on how much money they're able to move off of.
Yeah.
Can you move off of the entire Sonny Gray deal? Because if so, now you've got a little more in the coffers. Can you move on from at least most of the Miles Michaelis deal? Can you get rid of like 11 or 12 million bucks? Because if so, this would basically be a 1-for-1 replacement for what you ended up moving off of with Michaelis, and then you potentially get rid of the Sonny Gray deal as well. Now you're $30 million less than what you previously were. that allows you to go out and make these kinds of moves. If they are truly pretty cash-strapped going into this offseason, or at least they believe themselves to be cash-strapped going into this offseason, which is all that matters, they will probably not do any of these things that we're talking about here because it's just going to be too much for them.
Yeah.
And my guess is that's the more likely route for them is their moves this offseason will come mostly via trade. I'm not sure they will sign more than a couple of guys via free agency.
Probably bullpen arms would be my guess.
Yeah.
It'll be like a one-year bullpen arm. A lot of the rebuilding teams do that.
Absolutely.
Like the Pirates have done that for years.
And they can do this on the bullpen side of things where they're betting low and hoping for a little bit of upside similar to what they did last year.
If you're going to bring in like a rotation arm like a Buehler or a Bieber, like you're talking about, let's just use a nice, round, beautiful number of $50 million. Say that's what they say is what you got to cut payroll-wise. That might be too high, I don't know, but let's just use it. So if you're going to bring in a bullpen arm, a starter like Buehler, he's probably going to cost $15 million. You somehow now have to shed $65 million to get to that point. And that's where it gets hard. And to your point, like they've got some contracts where they can probably move on from. Gray, somebody might take the whole deal. Contreras, somebody might take the whole deal. Michaelis, Arenado, Matz, those contracts you're going to have to eat money to move on from.
He's Tanner. That's Alex. I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about my Missouri Tigers. An interesting game for them this weekend. We are officially at Prove It portion of the season. Every game from here on out is a pass-fail test. I don't care how they win. I care that they win. We'll talk about that coming up in 15 minutes. Also get T-Bone's thoughts on a big game this weekend that he's going to be in attendance for with the Illini taking on the Michigan Wolverines. But coming up next, it's our favorite time of the week. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not here on 101 ESPN.
We should get the duct tape and tape up BK's arms so he can't fly.
Mouth. His mouth should have been taped yesterday, not mine.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
Free. We're flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
Did you forget the lyrics?
314-964-6 is the Air Comfort Service X line for Believe It or Not. So I can't see in these. I don't know how you did a show with those yesterday.
These are actually worse because you got these bows in your eye.
This is what he looked like yesterday when I kept looking over when he had the glass on.
People kept thinking I was asleep. Even Katie watched the YouTube video and she goes, "Were you sleeping under the show?"
Yeah.
No, I just couldn't see her move.
Not yesterday. Definitely not yesterday.
What does that mean?
You didn't fall asleep during the show
taking
yesterday.
a shot.
All right,
bird over
all right,
there.
mister. Let's build around war.
All right, let's play a game of Believe It or Not. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are believing it or not here on BK and Ferrario. Guys, believe it or not, the New York Yankees are going to win the World Series this year, and we will look back on this run and say, a little fraudulent, never really played anybody.
Believe it. Unfortunately for the Yankees, I'm never going to remember their path to a World Series other than the team that they beat from the National League, which will probably be the Dodgers. That'll be their toughest opponent if they actually get to it and beat the Dodgers, because prior to that, it was a cakewalk. Especially that first round.
Yeah, no kidding. That team was terrible. Believe it. I think like if they get to the World Series, they're not beating the Dodgers. So then everybody's going to look back on that team, and I'm sure even Yankees fans will look back and go, well, wait, they had an easy path. They beat the Royals who couldn't hit. They beat Cleveland of all teams that nobody seems to know about, and yet somehow they won 92 games. Yeah, they're frauds to me. I don't think they're a very good baseball team, so believe it.
I think they're better than we're giving them credit for. I think Torres is a pretty good player at this point in his career. Stan's had a great postseason. Chisholm, Soto, Judge, not to put them all in the same category, but those are three really good all-around players as well. I think they have a pretty good lineup, and it's a little deeper than I would expect. I think where they fall flat is their pitching. Garrett Cole's been mostly fine. He was really good in that last game against the Royals, but Rodon's been okay. All they've really had that really stands out to me is Luke Bleepin Weaver, who came out of nowhere. So I think the lineup's a little better than we expected, but I do think their path has been unbelievably forgiving. So I'm going to believe this. I do think they're going to end up winning the World Series, and I think that we're going to look back and be like, man, how is that what they ended up going through? Alex, what do you got for us?
Guys, believe it or not, the Western Conference in the NHL won't be as dangerous as we originally thought they would. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but
I'm going to say not. I'll let you get to that, Alex.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to let you finish.
Because I remember this time last year where the Oilers looked like the worst team in the NHL, and then they went to the Stanley Cup, and now they're doing it again.
Can 2 straight seasons you fire a coach and be like, this is the interim coach that's going to take us there? Colorado and Nashville are a combined 0-7 and a combined -20. By the way, Yusei Saros has played the last 2 games for the Nashville Predators. The Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks are a combined 1-4-2 and have a combined -16 goal differential.
Man, what a weird start to the season this has been. It kind of reminds me of Major League Baseball, though, where
Hey, look, the Pirates.
People were like, oh, the Pirates are really good. And I was like, no, dude, they're not.
If the playoffs were to start today, which always a fun thing to do in the NHL.
Are we in?
We are in. Wild card. Your playoff teams would be Dallas, Utah, Winnipeg.
Okay.
Calgary, Vegas, Anaheim.
Oh,
That's how I saw it.
Minnesota, St. Louis. By the way, Utah, people just stop buying stock in this Utah. They're going to fall flat on their face at some point.
I think they're really fun.
They got no goaltending.
I've watched roughly 40 minutes.
Every team in the NHL has no goaltending.
Blues do.
By the way, that's why you don't pay goalies.
That's going to just bite you in the you-know-what sooner or later.
Believe it.
The Blues didn't really...
So.
I think what you're saying is don't pay like $10 million for a goalie.
Yeah, just don't pay him.
That I agree. Okay.
Anybody can have a puck hit.
I was going to say,
Never mind,
I agree
I would
with
like to
don't pay
back
$10
away.
million. Yeah.
And then
Hold on.
get over
What's
here.
BK do? Whoa!
T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys, believe it or not, right now, the favorite to win NFL MVP is Patrick Mahomes. Believe it or not.
He is by the Vegas odds, I believe, right now.
Yes. Believe it or not, he will win NFL MVP.
Oh, I was going to say, believe it. He has the best odds.
I'm going to say not.
I'm not believing this either. I think it's Josh Allen.
I think Mahomes has been just okay this year. I mean, he's arguably their biggest problem, which is a great problem to have as a team. But
Trade him.
They don't really have great wide receivers. I understand that. His interceptions have been awful this year. This is not like in the past where it's hitting guys in the hands and then it bobbles up and then boom, it's going the other direction. That happened to him in the past. This year, he's just making super weird decisions. I saw this stat the other day. Next Gen Stats for the NFL, their version of StatCast basically, has been around, I believe, since 2019. Patrick Mahomes has the lowest average depth of target, so how far he's throwing the ball down the field, since they began tracking that in the history of it. Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
That's not good.
He's throwing the ball closer to the line of scrimmage than any quarterback over the last 5 seasons so far this year. So I'm going to say not, because I don't think he's been a top 3 quarterback in the league this year, much less the MVP.
When you say that, I'm not going to believe it either. I actually think it's probably going to be Lamar again. He's got the 3rd best odds currently.
That's a good one. It's a good bet.
When you say that, though, like, it sounds like almost like a bad thing, a negative. Actually, I think it's him being smart and reading the defense. Because I think what you're seeing is a lot of teams are going to that cover 2, going with the 2 high safeties and saying, okay, don't beat us deep. And Mahomes just says, because what we've seen a lot in the NFL, and I think it's why offense was down early in the year, was, okay, all these teams want to take these deep shots. Are you going to be willing to just dink and doink your way down the field and go, instead of a 6-play drive, are you willing to go 11 plays? And Mahomes is smart enough to do that. I actually don't think that's a bad thing, because I don't think it's like suddenly he's lost arm strength or something.
I think it's going to be Josh Allen. Now you put Amari Cooper on there. You get your weapons now. I think Josh Allen is the 2nd best team in the AFC by the end of the season. I think he'll be the one that wins it.
Can Baker Mayfield win the MVP?
I think you'd have to be the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, I don't know if he can, just because they're not going to be. I mean, like, I look right now, the 4 best odds are for AFC quarterbacks. I think it's just because they're on good teams. I don't know if he can, because he's not on a great team.
Plus, you've got the interception side of it.
He has thrown too many interceptions.
And
but
Josh
so
Allen
has Mahomes. Mahomes has thrown 6. He's thrown 5. And
Allen
he's thrown
hasn't
15 he's thrown 15 touchdowns. Mahomes has thrown 6. So by the numbers, like, there's no case. It's been Baker over Mahomes so far this year, and Mahomes is the one that's favored. I don't know, man. They have very little in terms of their running game in Tampa Bay. Their defense is good, no doubt about it. Can't take that away from them. But like this weekend, on Monday night, they go up against the Baltimore Ravens. If Baker has another game similar to what he's done for the majority of this season, he should at least be in the conversation.
I'll tell you, what are the odds for Derrick Henry? I mean, if you got a guy
plus
that
6,000.
He's got 3 already over 100 rushing yard games where he's had multiple touchdowns.
He's not going to get it over Lamar. If there's a Raven that's going to end up getting it, it's going to be Lamar.
Yeah, I mean, he's got these touchdowns from a running back perspective.
NFL MVP should be labeled the NFL most valuable quarterback.
He could get Offensive Player of the Year. I don't know that we've ever seen that, where an MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year are teammates. That could be in play, but there's no chance that he's going to.
But when you're going to talk about MVP, he's been more valuable than Lamar Jackson for that team.
I disagree with that.
I think
Lamar's been really, really good.
Yeah.
I think Derrick Henry
he's able to throw the ball and run.
I get it, but I think Derrick Henry's been able to carry that team through 2 victories.
It is amazing, by the way, that the 5th and 6th best odds right now are Jaden Daniels and Sam Darnold.
That Sam Darnold one.
Who had that early on?
It's been a weird season so far, man. And Brock Purdy's right up there as well. And Brock Purdy, I think Brock Purdy's been I think he's been amazing.
I think he's been bad.
I think he's been terrible.
That's funny. I think he's been really good this year. I think Brandon Ayuk has been terrible. And I think that team, the defense, has taken a massive step back. I think it's masking the fact that Brock Purdy looks like a top 10 quarterback right now in the NFL, at least to me. Obviously, you guys disagree with that. All right, let's get to some of these.
And build him a statue.
From the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Alex, believe it or not, Zach Bolduc will remain in the top 6 when he's fully healthy.
What?
When the team is fully healthy, excuse me. I understand why that was confusing. Yeah. That's on me, not on the text.
Believe it. I think he's going to, they're going to go asset management first things first, and that's going to put him down because he doesn't have to go through waivers. Everyone else on this team is going to have to go through waivers. And as much as we like Bolduc, and Bolduc has looked better as the season's progressed, they're going to view this as, let's just put him down so he could play in the AHL until we're ready to have him consistently in our top 6.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it either. I'm with you. I think it's going to be asset management. Also, for being honest, he's played, 3 games, if I'm not mistaken? Has he been noticeable in 3 games? I think he had one really good shift. He led to the Joseph goal in the last game, but outside of that, I don't know if he's been noticeable.
Yeah. We're all on the same page. Believe it or not, Jaden Daniels will win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I'll believe this one.
Yeah, believe it. I think
Caleb's made it interesting. He's played really well over the last few weeks.
I just don't know if he's going to have the volume stats.
Especially if Washington gets into the playoffs over the Chicago Bears. That's going to catapult you.
They could win the East.
Yeah, if they win the East, which I think is fully in play for them.
Yeah.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, there will be multiple teams from the AFC East that make it into the playoffs this year. The Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots. Multiple teams from the AFC East will get into the playoffs this year.
I'm not buying into the new Jets now that they've got Devontae Adams. I think it's going to be the Bills. I think you'll see multiple teams from the AFC North, potentially the AFC South if they would just stick with Joe Flacco. But no, I'm not going to buy into the Bills. Or I'm not buying into anybody beyond the Bills.
That's where I'm at.
Oh, man, I'm going to believe it. I think the Jets will turn it around and make the playoffs as a 9-win team.
Aaron Rodgers lover.
I think he's been bad. He's like their biggest problem, but he's still Aaron Rodgers. And even though he's not as good as he was 10 years ago, now that he's got his wide receiver, we'll see if he can play as like an average quarterback. And if he can, their defense should play better. I think they're still going to make the playoffs.
So they do have a very forgiving schedule. This weekend, tough. You got to go on the road at Pittsburgh. Good defense, but it's Russell Wilson's first game. You should win that one. New England, Houston's a tough one. Arizona, Indy, Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, LA Rams. It's a very forgiving schedule. So if they simply go like one step up from where they've been at, they should be able to make the postseason. I just don't know that I trust them. So I have trust issues with Aaron Rodgers, the way that Aaron Rodgers has trust issues with factual information.
And that's the sixth easiest
We're going to get political again?
No, there's no politics. Hey, facts are facts, all right? He's Alex's T-Bone. I'm
This
BK.
is terrible.
Coming up
Sorry,
next,
John.
Mizzou has a prove-it game on Saturday. It's no longer about style points. It's about winning, baby. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues will be back in action tonight as they take on the New York Islanders. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Garber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
I'm no longer asking how they win, just that they can indeed win. That's the case for the Missouri Tigers. That starts this week. We're officially into the second half of the season for Mizzou, Alex. And despite all of the frustrations, despite the way that they performed against Texas A&M, everything they wanted to accomplish coming into the season is still very much on the table. You're 5-1. The rest of the country, all of the top teams for the most part, outside of about 3 of them, have a loss on their resume as well. You're right in line with all of those teams. If you take care of business against Auburn, and then you go do something that very few expected before the season and beat a vulnerable Alabama team on the road, and then finish out business against Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas, you will be a part of the college football playoff this year at 11-1. That's what it takes. But Alex, this game against Auburn, I think there are some Mizzou fans that probably look at it and say, okay, they should definitely win this one. I would have a little bit of pause with that. I know Auburn's 2-4 this season. Their record is not going to get anybody excited. And they've lost all of the real games that they've played so far this year. Their 2 wins are against Alabama A&M and New Mexico. Cal, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Georgia, all beat them.
They did put 73 points up on Alabama A&M, though. So
they have yet to score more than 21 points against a Power 4 conference opponent. But that is very misleading, dude. This offense moves the ball at will at times. Their quarterback is top 3 in the conference in yards per attempt. Their running back is top 3 in the conference in rushing yards so far this year. They have a wide receiver that is top 3 in the conference in receiving yards so far this year. So you might be asking yourself, okay, then why aren't they scoring more points? They turn it over like crazy, and when they get into the red zone over the last couple of weeks, when they haven't turned it over like crazy against Oklahoma and Georgia, they stall out in the red zone. So there's been weird stuff that's happening, but dude, in one game, weird stuff can happen in the other direction where it finally clicks for them. They don't have those turnovers because Missouri doesn't create a whole lot of pressure from their defensive line, and their corners have not been great so far this year at the ball skill technique. This is a game that is very much more up in the air than I think a lot of people are giving it credit for. How are you feeling going in for Mizzou versus Alabama, Alex?
Okay with it, because I do think that you're the superior team. But here's the thing. I don't think any game the rest of the way is a easy win for Mizzou, because I haven't seen their offense provide me the confidence to say, like, oh, yeah, they got this in the bag. Because every single game they're going to go into for the rest of the season is, yeah, but what does their offense look like? So when you take on an Auburn team, I think I'm always stepping into these games that Mizzou plays and saying, okay, is this the game that they take the next step? And I wonder if you're never going to see that. I wonder if this is just the team. And you're right. Wins are the most important thing right now. And that Alabama's the one that I think every Mizzou fan is circling, because Auburn, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas, yeah, those are games that you look at and you say Mizzou needs to beat those teams. But the Alabama ones, you're like, this is what makes or break your playoff hopes right now. It's hard not to overlook each week, though, when you have a schedule like, or a game like that on your schedule, because Auburn's one that could give you fits, just like Texas A&M did it, just like Vanderbilt did. So it's one of those situations right now for Mizzou where I go into every game and it's kind of a wild card for me.
This game opened as a 7-point line in favor of Missouri. That's way too big. It's now down to 4. I think that feels more in line with how I'm feeling about this game. Something like 24-20. Feels like the kind of game that I'm anticipating. I think Auburn they have very young defensive backs, so Missouri could get a couple of deep balls, which has been something they've struggled with all year long. But running on them ain't going to be easy. They've got a really talented front 7. Missouri struggles to get pressure. I think Auburn's going to have a few big plays of their own, especially through the passing game. And the last time that I saw Missouri against a real opponent, they ran all over them in Texas A&M. It's at home. That changes things. Missouri has been very good at home. The last time they lost at home against an unranked opponent was 2022 against Kentucky. Before that, you have to go back to 2021. It's been a while. But I'll be taking Missouri in this game. I think it's going to be really close, and that's why, for me, against Auburn, and really this is the case the rest of the year, just find a way. 21-20, last second kick. I don't care. Just find a way to get a victory in this one. It's a pass-fail grade for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that stance because let me ask you this question, and maybe you disagree with this. Is Missouri great at anything? I don't know if they're great at anything. The passing game's has a lot to be desired, and at this point, we're 6 games in. I don't think they're going to figure it out.
Up until the game against Texas A&M, I would have said running.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
and then
now it's
like
changed.
faded away.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
I don't think they're great at anything. And if that's the case, everybody talks about the SEC. They're always like, oh, the SEC is such a deep conference. It is such a great conference. This is the first year in a couple of years now where I'm looking at it going, I don't know if they've got the elite team, maybe outside of Texas. The SEC is deep because you're right. Auburn is no cakewalk. South Carolina, who they've got later on in their schedule, is no cakewalk. They've been competitive in most of their games. In fact, they should have beaten Alabama last week.
Oklahoma, excellent defense.
Oklahoma's got
Terrible
a great
offense,
defense.
Really good defense.
The only team on the Arkansas already has a big win. They beat Tennessee, if I remember correctly. Like, they're feisty as well. They got a young quarterback that's playing well. The only team on the schedule that's a gimme in the SEC is Mississippi State.
And I think they're less of a gimme than you're giving them credit for. They just kept it close against Georgia for 3 quarters last week. Earlier this season, Arizona State, which is the belle of the ball right now, they lost to them by 7 on the road at Arizona State. I think they're a little closer than people are giving them credit for. They've lost all of these games, but they're keeping things close. And if you have a couple of bounces that go in their direction, suddenly you're talking about a very different team.
If you're not great at anything, and maybe it is the running game, maybe it was just the one game against A&M, what can you turn to if you're Missouri of, okay, this game's getting close, here's what we can rely on? Last year I thought the passing game was elite, or the running game was elite with, why am I drawing a blank on his name?
Schrader,
thank you. So when the game was getting close, what could they do? We're going to give the ball to Schrader, and he's going to run out the clock, and we're going to end up with this victory. They don't have an elite spot this year, and I do think it's where it is, to your point. Hey, I don't care how they win. They can't be going for style points right now. Yeah, they just got to find a way to take care of business in the SEC.
And that's going to be hard, I would imagine, for Mizzou, who still feels like they have something to prove on the offensive side to where you're trying for those style points, and you have to wipe that away.
Is what happened to them against Texas A&M. I think they were trying to prove a point against A&M early on, and then when they had a couple of big plays that got called back due to penalties, they're like, what do we do now? We have no pivot here. We have no answers. And that's when things started to snowball on them. T-Bone, we're going to spend a lot more time on this game tomorrow because it's one of the bigger games of the week, especially locally. You're going to be at Illinois versus Michigan. Illinois brought out these retro old-school jerseys. I'm not sure what they're doing with these, but whatever.
Feels like bad luck already.
This is a huge game, man. Michigan coming in, top 25 opponent. This is not the Michigan of last year. They've already dropped a couple of games, including last week against Washington. How are you feeling about your Illini heading into this one? Big picture-wise, we'll break it down a little bit more tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm worried because I said this the other day. I think this is the best coaching job that Brett Bielema's done in his 4th year at Illinois because to me, they're too weak on the O-line and D-line. And Michigan loves to run the ball, and that is one area that I'm going to be monitoring in this one. That is going to be what the adjustment is. Can they find a way to slow down the Michigan run? Because the quarterbacks don't scare me. Can you put bodies into the box, slow down the run enough, and then be able to find a way to generate some offense? They're without Caden Fagan. They've been rotating 4 running backs in and out. They're going to have to rely on the passing game, but it's going to come down to can they stop the run and can they establish the run? If they can do those 2 things, they're going to be able to beat Michigan at home this week. Yeah,
old school,
if I told you there was
Big
ever a
Ten.
Brett Bielema football game, that's the one right there.
I wish they would have picked better looking jerseys.
This is like old school Wisconsin versus Michigan. Like, line them up, win at the line of scrimmage, leather helmets, which is almost what they're wearing this weekend. It's a thing. Terrible. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we'll put a bow on this thing, start to preview tonight's game with the Blues versus the Islanders here in the BK and Ferrario Rewind on 101 ESPN. Catch Anthony Stalter and Rafe from The Riz Show Thursday night. That's tonight, ladies and gentlemen, at Hot Shots in Fenton from 6:30 to 8:30. Come hang out, watch some Thursday night football, Broncos versus the Saints. And while you're there, you can get signed up for some Point and 101 ESPN giveaways. Enjoy a cold Bud Light as well. It's Thursday tonight from 6:30 to 8:30 with Rafe and Stalter at Hot Shots in Fenton. It's all refreshed by Bud Light. Alex Ferrario has your pregame coverage for the Blues versus the Islanders starting tonight at 6 o'clock. Alex, I'm actually intrigued to see what the Blues look like tonight. There's been so much discussion. I think it's been skewed primarily towards the negative side of things. I don't do that on purpose. I actually like watching this team right now, but there's so many changes with the line combinations. I'm intrigued to see what that looks like.
I am too, and this is going to be a really tough matchup for the Blues in terms of generating scoring chances. I know the Islanders haven't looked good in the early portion of the season. They've got their best goaltender, Ilya Sorokin, playing tonight, who I think has been dealing with something over these last few games. And then defensively, this is actually a really tough team to play against the New York Islanders. Offensively, I don't know if it scares you as much as the potential like Minnesota or Carolina or Winnipeg, but you're going to have a tough time trying to generate offensive chances. And keep an eye on special teams because the Blues have given up 2 shorthanded goals. Islanders have already scored 2 shorthanded goals in the other portion of the season.
T-Bone tonight on the baseball side of things. It is both games in action starting at 4 o'clock this afternoon. It's my guy, Clark Schmidt, going up against Matthew Boyd. That is a pitching matchup for the Yankees versus the Guardians. I personally think that the Yankees have a pretty sizable advantage there. You guys know how I feel about Clark Schmidt,
Let me
though.
describe that 4 o'clock game for you. Take your afternoon nap during that ALCS
No, don't do that.
matchup.
You're going to bed at 3 a.m.
On the NLCS side of things, Dodgers versus the Mets. Dodgers trying to take a commanding 3-1 series lead at Citi Field. Yamamoto on the mound. They're using him like an opener right now. Jose Quintana on the mound for the Mets. I don't think they're going to use him like the Cardinals did, or was 5-5. T-Bone, do you have a preference on that side of things? Dodgers are pretty significant favorite in Vegas.
Yeah, I actually think the Mets are going to win this one. I think they're going to even it up at 2 apiece. I think they've got the better pitching matchup. I mean, we talked about earlier in the show guys that take their game to the next level. Somehow Quintana's one of those when it comes to October. So
former Cardinal.
Yeah, I think he'll pitch well. I think the Mets will win tonight, even that series at 2 apiece.
I think that the Dodgers will find a way to finish this one out. I think they'll lose the next game.
Take a Pete Alonso bomb tonight is what I'm thinking.
Ooh, we like that against Yamamoto, huh?
Or a bullpen arm.
Okay. Last time that Jose Quintana went up against the Dodgers, he pitched against them once this season. 6 innings, 3 earned runs allowed, including 2 home runs. So it was a quality start. Lose 3-0.
Oh.
So
wow. I should have seen where that was going.
I can see something like that happening tonight. I don't know, man. I don't get the good vibes from the Mets right now.
I think they've been exposed.
That could
Grimace
change.
might be there, so
This time
everything.
tonight, that could totally change.
Yeah. I mean, these series, I mean, we listened to a podcast, The Round Table, which is from The Athletic. They're right. I mean, every series you feel like one team loses, you're like, oh, it's over, and then they find a way to win the next game. So give me the Mets tonight.
Well, you will be able to see that tonight. You will be able to hear Blues versus Islanders right here on 101 ESPN. Alex's pregame starting at 6 o'clock. Puck drop with Joey and Curbs tonight at 7. We will break it all down for you tomorrow. We'll be broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. Mike McKenna will join us as he does each and every Friday. Until then, for Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Fastlane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.